In 2004, something unexpected happened. ECW, the company that was thought to be gone forever, was resurrected in a different form. Through the release of the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD, the world rediscovered the fire, the passion, and the madness that made ECW unforgettable. What started as a tribute to the lost legend became something much more. ECW wasn't just back for one night, it was back for good. ECW may have fallen, but its legacy, its heart, never died. Through its rise, its fall, and its resurrection, ECW proved that sometimes the greatest movements are the ones that refuse to stay down. We discuss ECW One Nght Stand 2005 and much, much more. Welcome to episode 21 of the Stevie Richards Show. Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode 21. Yes, the Stevie Richards Show can now, at least in the United States, legally drink alcohol. Although in England, where my co-host resides, it's much, 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 much younger. My co-host James, who, by the way, I should call him based on last week's episode about doing the job, the undefeated James here at the Stevie Richards Show.
You can even see my biceps from my cardigan.
Yeah, go back to the steroid episode.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Oh, good. I'm glad you did that. That's good for screen grabs. Hello, everybody. I'm James. I'm Stevie Richards' co-host. I'm having that. I'm sorry, you couldn't see him hit the double gun pose, which way to the beach, that kind of thing. We're going to be doing ECW One Nght Stand. Let me tell you about that. It's been an absolute rush. How many different subjects did we go through this week before we, for whatever reason, settled on this?
I think in the last... what I've been up for now, like 5 hours. The past 5 hours have been like one new topic per hour, but we always pull through with it, and it's great to have the creative sessions throughout the week. So now today's ECW One Nght Stand, but it's really going to be kind of spider webbing out into many behind the scenes, post One Nght Stand, and then maybe touching on, I think there's a whole episode, there we go with that word again. Sorry, Vince. But right away, with a future episode, I think we just focus on my entire time in the new ECW, but this is the kind of the birth of that.
Yeah, we had ECW One Nght Stand 1, ONS 2, December to Dismember, the whole run up into the WWE ECW. I had suggested WCW Your Run. I know you very much like that.
I don't think that's the term. The run and the era, is Savage, a cup of coffee. That would probably be more. Talking about our last week's episode about Randy Savage. Once again, an honor to be in the ring with him, even just for that one time at the Night of Upsets, and people seem to enjoy that story.
With that, just before, because Stevie referenced the drinking age here, it's 18. It is 16 if you are out with a parent and you're having a meal, and then the child can order alcoholic drinks from 16. But it's not illegal. I actually looked this up. It's not illegal to give your child an alcoholic drink unless they are under 5. So there you go.
Talk about, that's some, man, they're really strict with that rule over there. Now, 5 years old.
Hey, you need to have a...
I got to do earlier.
You need to have a... You need to have a sippy cup.
There you go.
For your schnapps. Look.
Hey, do they put them in like the margaritas and like the Capri Sun things for the little kids?
Oh, they should do with a straw. That'd be lovely.
Like a juice box, but filled with vodka.
It's Europe. It's all good. Don't worry. We all have a drink.
By the way, I want to say this. Last week on the community page, I posted a picture of myself and Raven. Raven, not Raven. We talked about Raven on the pre-show on Patreon. You can catch that.
Didn't we just?
He's not very happy with me, but Maven is very happy with me. I was happy to see him. This past Saturday, we reacted and did a What Went Wrong video on multiple matches, including the Joey Mercury ladder thing from that tag match with the Hardys, a couple other things, people getting injured. it was good to see Maven. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because very soon you will be interviewing Maven on the WSI channel. So everybody go subscribe to that.
Yeah, I'll be interviewing Maven. You're going to be on Maven's channel. Maven will, amazingly, I don't know how many people know this, will feature in ECW One Nght Stand, one of our later stories that we're going to be doing on the video as well. But before we get into that, we've got a What Went Wrong with Mike Rotunda versus Death.Row, a enhancement talent that went wrong. But before we do that, we have to do the plugs, and we do a very quick version of the plugs. Stevie Richards has a fitness YouTube channel. It's linked on the front page of this very YouTube channel if you want to go there and subscribe and show Stevie some love. And there is also, of course, the Patreon as well. And we finally figured out that we could put a link to the Patreon at the end of every video. So hopefully even more people will be going there.
Very cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, this Mike Rotunda match versus Death.Row, which basically at the opening, we don't have the audio of this match, but we're going to go through and break it down and analyze it. But Tony Schiavone on the opening makes fun of Death.Row's outfit. They said, oh, yeah, they wrote his prison number on the magic marker on the back and let him out for a couple hours, basically saying his outfit looked like it was just thrown together last second. And yes, it looks like he just came from pretty much day one orientation of wrestling school and nothing after that, and decided to put him on TV.
So if I've watched this, I've watched it only maybe once, and I don't remember what happened. So like me, and I imagine a lot of the people out there are going to be watching it for the first time. So Stevie, what went wrong?
Let me ask you a question about that before we get into the actual video. Do we play the JR? He recounted everything. We were going to react to JR's, because somehow the algorithm after all these years, I thought it was a new clip from Grilling JR, but because this past week, everybody's been sharing this in the wrestling world. So I don't know why the algorithm picked it up after so many years. You said it's like 3 or 4 years old.
Yes, it's 3 years old. I've teed it up to, it's only a short video, but it's like 1 minute 36 in. So if you want to get JR's comments, just bear with me 1 second.
It reminds me of the old cliche, don't confuse kindness as a weakness.
Right.
Rotunda, such a nice guy, total pro. But you take one live round, okay, he potatoed me. I got sent to Spud City, and then he does it again because he thinks he can get away with it, and get over, and then that didn't flush. So like I said, Mike Rotunda is a tough guy. Hey, look, you don't play at a Division I school of great significance like Syracuse without being a tough son of a bitch. You can't go through all the wrestling workouts. People that don't follow amateur wrestling ain't got a clue how hard that is. Isolated men in a small facility and beating the shit out of each other, and wrestling for the major school against the best competition in the world, and then you're playing on a big-time football program and playing. You're starting. I think Mike was a defensive end or defensive tackle. So he was a tough guy.
Yeah.
But he's such a nice guy, Conrad.
Right.
That got confused sometimes. So I vaguely remember that, quite frankly. But it was all during that time there in late 1990 that they kept looking for something for Mike to do.
Well, they're going to find it.
Well, yeah, but you can't get over changing your direction every week or two. People get confused. And look, pro wrestling, even though it's a big part of your life and my life, without question. But a lot of people don't look at it that way. They look at it as an entertainment outlet.
Sure.
And it's as simple as that. And so when it gets confusing to follow, or you got to try, you asked me to explain the Triple Tower of Doom. I think that match is too hard to figure out, and nobody gave a shit about it.
Man, JR is so smart, man. For anybody who doesn't know or you're learning about wrestling, sorry to cut you off, but man, it can't be understated at all or overstated enough that that was like something when he put that, even with 31 years of experience and then doing this and trying to pay attention to every nuance and detail within the business, he just encapsulated the struggles of every wrestler trying to find their niche and why sometimes you need to be cooled off for a little bit. And we just can't throw you back out there a week or two later. That explains like so much. Even now, the light bulb goes off and things click to me from decades ago. That gave me goosebumps. That's an amazing like piece of advice to give you perspective. He did from I can't even say it, from a promoter, a writer, a booker, a talent, an agent, a fan. Everybody could have just like gained a ton of knowledge from that sub 2 minutes from JR's podcast.
Was this around the time that Mike Rotunda was becoming a captain of a boat rather than a captain of the varsity club?
Yeah, the boat hat came after this. And then the captain of varsity club, where he really showed, he was kind of the IRS character, the same exact, he reminds me a little bit of Swinger, just with that like constantly disgusted look on his face when he was like nothing ever made him happy type thing. And that's kind of like Swinger's like, oh, I call it the crash pad look, because we were at doing motion capture for SmackDown versus Raw. And every time they had asked Swinger to take a bump on the crash pad or do something, he was like, he gave the little snarl. But that's what that reminds me of Rotunda's heel gimmick, which, man, Mike Rotunda was a babyface. Like you can see here, very vanilla, very milquetoast. And like JR said, that kindness is mistaken as a weakness, that he's not a really vicious, tough guy. But that came out when he was a heel, the true nature of his toughness. So, yeah, you got it for an amateur wrestler. And that's what, in this What Went Wrong, when we go to the smart board here, people aren't going to really see much violence, because real violence is never over-exaggerated. The things that really hurt are, like in the UFC, a game of centimeters or millimeters of moving someone's neck and head. And he's twisting him up like a pretzel, but you don't see it because he's not yanking it like and going back and forth from one foot to the other, in a distance. It's literally just little bit, and we're going to see a thing here, and I'm excited to show it, not for Death Row, but for everybody out there. His little hand movement with the back of his hand against his head, planting down on the mat, and just it's like this much. He is torquing him so bad. Like, it's like a Stu Hart, like dungeon type of stretch. That's what I saw in this. So I'm going to switch the cameras here for you so James can see. And here we are. And the thing is, as we go through this, I included the entrance, which is great, because as Mike's coming down to the ring, you want to talk about unassuming. Like, if you were somebody looking at this and looking at Death Row and then Mike Rotunda, and like that Death Row guy's a million times tougher because he just looks tough, and we're going to find out different, what went different during this segment. So here's Mike coming to the ring. That's Death Row. And there's Death Row. Hey, by the way, I want to say this. The budget must have really, really been enhanced here for WCW. You know why? Or NWA? Unlike Avalanche from last week's episode, you have all the letters. There's no W missing from Death Row or anything like that.
They could afford the E.
So they could. You know what? Right there. So they literally could only afford the E like every other match for the enhancement talent. So good call, James. It's good fantasy booking. So here's Death Row with the marker right there. He's looking, like, if you look at this, it literally looks like Death Row is maybe the star, and Mike Rotunda, even though with the entrance, might be the enhancement talent. If you're just the eye test of looking at it, Death Row looks more like, oh, that's your standard monster in wrestling. Now, this dude, first of all, I know this is where I get a little bit like whatever, cannot lock up. Look how close he is to Mike's nose right there. That's like a Sandman lockup, or almost breaking your nose on the lockup type deal.
Is he crossing the center line? Is that the issue with the lockup? So
yes.
Yeah.
Well, what he's doing is when he does it, his right foot's coming forward instead of his left. Look, Mike's, You got to match like Mike could have kneed him right in between the legs. Do you see that? Mike's left foot and his right foot's right here, where his left foot has to be up and match. That's because when you do that, you're not gonna crack knees, you're not gonna knee anybody anywhere, and you're lined up. That's why when he locked up, it almost looked like he's kind of going around and locking up with him, like almost where he's gonna grab him in a right-handed headlock type thing. Yeah, it's completely wrong. So that right there, much like with Dutch, now Dutch says if somebody's got the laces out, they don't know they're green. This lockup just tells Mike Rotunda everything, that this is not going to be a night off, that he's going to have a struggle. And who knows before if this dude was talking crap and being loud and obnoxious and Mike's like, and he's like, this is what I'm going to do and everything. You know what I mean? There's people like that just are the loudest. But the quiet ones like Mike and Fit Finley and everybody, those are the guys to look like the Simpsons episode. That guy's just standing there doing nothing. I want to see what he does. That's Mike Rotunda right here. The lockup here is at least his left foot's there, because if his left foot wasn't forward, death rows with the E and the W, he wouldn't be able to grab the headlock, which, by the way, I'm going to show you right here. Look at where his right elbow is. What in the world is this? Who headlock? Like what? The headlock is meant to torque down. So right there, Mike already knows too. He doesn't even know how to do a headlock correctly. That right elbow is up in the air. It's already like he knows he's not in for a night off. I keep saying that over and over again. Now, Mike took a terrible chance even taking a shoulder block from this guy. He could have came up and jacked him on the jaw, put the point of the shoulder into him. He could have done a lot wrong there. So that went there. Now this, you talk about like literally cannot run the ropes and then bounces off this rope. Look at his feet together. If that rope broke, dude, he would have just went just like that. As a matter of fact, I wish it did, because I feel bad that Mike had to endure this. It's almost like, you know what this is? There had to be a crop of guys, Mike Blackwell, this guy, and whoever else, that just felt like they're going to get their stuff in no matter what. Now, Death Row is coming from prison. I don't think his family's in the audience, so we don't know if that's the case. But to bump this crappy for somebody, you're not doing yourself any favors. So even if it didn't turn into a shoot, this dude should not be. I don't even know how he got the match. That would be my number one question for JR. Who booked him? Where did he come from? Was he an actual wrestler? Because what I'm looking at here, there's no I can't say, oh, he went to Power Plant or he went to the local Atlanta wrestling school. He has no fundamentals whatsoever. Nothing. It's like they took him, like they used to back in the day, actually. Terry Taylor and a lot of other guys, they would literally put him in the ring. Al Snow told this story on house shows and stuff, that the Andersons would stretch people in the ring. And if you survived that during the day, you might get a match that night. But you didn't know how to wrestle. You would just, even Hulk Hogan, I think, got in the ring well before he was ready to wrestle. I'm sure Dutch started kind of just getting in there. Jerry Lawler was super green, but I guess they had the it factor to some degree, that they saw something in them. I'm belaboring the point, but there's nothing with this guy. Whatever that was, I don't even know. I think he was expecting Mike to come out for an elbow. See? Look at that. Or he's just dancing. Look at that. There you go. Two-step. What song would you think he's dancing to?
The Birdie Dance. Oh, I'm not sure you know the Birdie Dance.
Here we go again.
Disco Duck.
Oh, the Disco Duck. I know that one. Okay. Either Mike didn't hear him. Mike shouldn't even be listening, because Mike should be calling everything at this point. But it seems like now the communication's broken down. That's usually what happens if you're charging stop, they don't come out or they don't move. Then you get into that little kind of scrum type of, we're trying to figure it out and talk together. But it seems like there's two different pages going on here about the match. This is a shoot right down on the left shoulder. Now, Mike, here, this is where, about a few seconds after this pause part, this is where I think he says something to the effect of calm down, settle down, take it easy, whatever it is. That's standard fare. What he's doing here is the match is completely broken down. The communication is broken down. Before anybody gets hurt and they start running around and ducking and bumping or anything, Mike is bringing him down, holding him down, telling him, work with me. So this is not a thing to dress down Death Row or anybody else. This is to reset the match and hopefully get it back on track. So it's actually Mike's doing him a favor and everybody by trying to shut the match down temporarily and say, let's work together and finish this thing without getting hurt. This is where, here it is. Now he's got the clamp here. When he lets go of the clamp, I'm going to show a little thing there, like I talked about, where he's torquing the neck just with that one hand. And this hurts. He's cross-facing. There it is. Now see right here? He's making a fist against his head, and he's got him right under the chin. He's not choking him, but he's doing the thing of just, now if he turns his wrist a little bit, he's literally, it's kind of like a cauliflower ear, but on the jaw, he's just rubbing against the jaw and just working at. Watch right there. I got to slow it down. You see him? He's turning the fist up a little bit and just torquing his neck as, by the way, look at him, covering the mouth, covering part of the nose, taking his breath away. So he's doing, dude, this is why amateur wrestling, for the most part, doesn't get translated well in pro wrestling. But if you look at it correctly, he's working right here on him. He's sitting on him or laying on him. He's got this. He's past him with his body here. So Death Row has no leverage. That's why Mike can put the right hand down, torque this around here, and this is, dude, you could literally like superimpose Stu Hart over Mike Rotunda. And it's literally, this is the dungeon. And he's stretching him. Right there. He's got two hands trying to pull down, and he can't do it. And I don't think he's working. I think he's trying to get him to pull down off of covering his mouth. He's taking a breath right there. But look at him right there. It's such a small thing. Look at this is the hand motion right here. This is what I'm talking about. Right here. Watch when the hand comes up. The thumb. He's just twisting that wrist and causing him pain as he's covering his mouth right here. Rotunda is a badass, man. Holy God. Now he's trying to work with him, but he's clamping. Now Mike here, he's riding him right on his hip. He has the, technically side control, but he's not side control like the UFC where he has it and they're both flat. But this dude's not going anywhere. Turns him over. He's totally, now right here, Mike could do anything he wants to him, but he's trying to work with him, but he's still holding him down. This dude's not calming down, because if he was calming down, Mike would tell him to get to the ropes, let him up, grab a headlock, do something in a pro wrestling sense. This is going on uncomfortably too long. Do you agree? Mm-hmm. Now, you know why I know this is a shoot as well? Mm-hmm. Which arm is he grabbing now?
Ah, right.
He's not working. He's not working. He's just taking whatever's there for him because the left arm is away. So he's taking the limb that's most available to him, which is not the one you work in American wrestling. And that proves right there. He now needs to really try to calm him down, almost not injure him, but rough him up a little bit with this hold to get him to calm down one last time. Look at that, dude. His face is now planted down into the mat. Once again, he can't catch his breath, so he can't breathe. That's what you do in amateur wrestling. In any fight, you're trying to take the breath away or cost them breathing or breaths so they can gas out quicker. Like what Logan Paul had said, that Floyd Mayweather was actually covering his mouth and stealing a breath here, stealing a breath there, and it adds up. So now I stretch, man, but that would, my shoulder might pop out. I got a good amount of shoulder mobility, but that's rough. So that guy's shoulder could have been stretched some ligaments and tendons. he's kind of going for a shoot pin right here. There's no kind of. He's trying to do in amateur wrestling, trying to kind of shoot a half or something to lay on him for the pin. Oh, there it is. Did you see that?
No, rewind. I didn't see it. Didn't catch it.
Okay, slow-mo. I'm going to do it in slow-mo. Watch the elbow come up and catch him. Slow-mo. See it?
Mm.
Get it to it now. Watch it come up and hit him. Oh! I'll zoom in a little bit on that. We'll replay it. It's a rough elbow, dude. Watch. Rotunda's a tough guy. And what does he do? Rotunda does this. Oh, left jab. Like he just jabbed him right there. He gave him a pretty rough elbow there. He gave him a pretty rough elbow. And the face, Mike's face right there is just like, now I don't know. That's right there. The face of somebody who was like, I'm a nice guy, but you know what? I have a limit too. What are your thoughts on watching that? The most unentertaining match you'll probably ever watch. And I feel bad for Mike Rotunda because his gimmick doesn't even allow for any type of excitement. It's kind of an amateur wrestling gimmick to begin with. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, well, there's two things. It's funny how when a wrestling match devolves into a shoot, just how boring it can be. Earthquake and Japanese guy, Tozawa? No, is it not Tozawa? Anyway, there was one in Japan.
No, I know you're talking about. I
think it was the guy who's in WrestleMania 7 as well at that point. It was like an
Hockey Bono.
No.
Hockey Bono was in WrestleMania with Big Show.
He was.
Oh, Tenru. Was it Tenru? Tenru was in WrestleMania 7.
Katao. Yeah, Koji Katao.
Also, there's Andre with that guy. Remember the great whatever where Andre knocked him out?
There was one with Andre.
Or was that Inoki? Inoki knocked him out, I think, right? Wasn't a guy not working with
No,
Inoki?
you're thinking of the great Antonio versus Antonio.
The great Antonio.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
That's the exception to the rule where a shoot fight is devolved.
Future episode.
Yeah, future episode.
But Andre shot on a guy too, didn't he?
Yeah.
Andre, if somebody wasn't working with Andre.
Yeah, this was like in 1986, and I believe he was quite drunk.
Dude, you think it would, now that we're talking about it, it's like, I can't believe the number of times these types of things happen in professional wrestling. Most famously, too, even though it wasn't a complete, like, shoot like we're talking about over in Japan with those types of situations, but I watched Tully Blanchard versus Shane Douglas, and I'm sure Shane talked about it. That was a terrible match between two fantastic workers, and they were just on different pages. I don't know the backstory of that or if there's any animosity, but it seemed like nobody, I mean, I know, I would guess it was more Tully didn't want to work with Shane as much as Shane didn't want to work with Shane wants to work with everybody. I mean, that's a personal thing, but I'd never seen Shane go into business for himself.
No, I think with the Tully Blanchard thing, it was Tully had been out of business pretty much 5 years by that point. He wasn't in the shape he should have been to do an hour-long match, and apparently Tully insisted on having an hour-long match. So that's why that devolved. But it was Akira Maeda with Andre the Giant. That was bugging me. I was also thinking there was a later one, and they were both middle-aged on an indie show, Jim Duggan and Matt Bourne.
Matt Bourne. I saw that. Yeah. You want to shoot, brother? You want to shoot? And me out by the car. And I do remember that. What I was going to say, just to give Tully, I'd like one of the best workers I've ever watched as far as just a good old-fashioned heel. Him versus Magnum, Starrcade 85, the I Quit match with the chair, the stabbing, and the eye. And the other one that people don't talk about enough was him versus Terry Funk. I believe Halloween Havoc or Slamboree. I think it was Slamboree. Him versus Terry Funk. And they went at it, dude.
So, future episode then, eh?
I want to react to that. But Tully versus Terry Funk was literally something of viciousness, aggression, violence, without it being like super garbage. They were just fighting. These dudes were fighting and wrestling and struggling, and it was one of the best. Like, it's like Dutch versus Orndorff. Like Dutch versus Orndorff in WCW or NWA had the presentation and the pacing of this match we just watched, but with cooperation.
Perry Saturn versus Mike Bell. We've got to do that one.
Yeah. And that wasn't so much like what we're looking at now or the Mike Blackwell. That was Perry, I guess, misconstruing what Mike was doing as not selling and not bumping, and then he got angry.
Yeah.
And you interviewed Perry, so you know better than I do.
Well, Perry, I didn't ask him about that, but I've heard him talk about it before, where they were G'ing him up in the back, and they were G'ing up Mike Bell in the back as well, just to make something happen, basically. Just wind them up, say, oh, Mike Bell's going to go for you, and then Mike Bell they told Mike Bell, you really should get your stuff in on Perry, and then it all just evolved really quickly.
And then the office got mad at Perry and punished him afterwards.
All of a sudden,
for what they did.
He's in love with the mop. There you go. That's the wrestling business for you. We're going to leave that there. That was a long old segment as well. That was some serious analysis. I mean, it's a shame that we don't do the analysis anymore.
Should I apologize or be proud of it?
No, be proud of it. I'm just sorry that we don't do the analysis anymore.
I can't wait. I keep trying to tell you we're going to bring it back, and you keep refusing.
Let's go to ECW One Nght Stand then. So, before we talk about One Nght Stand, we have to talk about what led to One Nght Stand coming out and being realized. And it sort of weirdly happened to be a DVD that I had. I bought it, loved that DVD. It was one of the first WWE documentaries that was really worth watching, and they did it properly. And it was the rise and fall of ECW. The pay-per-view ended up being an idea of Rob Van Dam being pitched to Vince McMahon to then become a pay-per-view later on. But let's talk about the DVD itself. You feature very, very heavily in the DVD. When did you... Is this one of those things where they just catch you on TV one day and say, oh, by the way, we need interviews, would you do one? Or do you know there's projects coming up sort of weeks in advance?
I don't quite remember, but my whatever recall I do have of it, it wasn't a preparation type thing of like next week or the week after we're going to do this. I did show up and they said, hey, today we're going to do interviews because we're doing an ECW DVD. I don't think they had the name, or maybe they had it and didn't inform me. And they did sit down and ask me a lot of questions. And I had in my mind when they told me about it, and Dreamer and everybody else, because they've never taken care of anything outside of the WWE machine. So we're like, there's no way. And we were actually right later on when they brought the new ECW back. But this DVD, I was like, is this going to be... I don't even know if it was out then. It might have been out when we did this or whatever. But I remember thinking years and years down the line that I had suspicions it was going to be like the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, where they just bury everybody and everything and were garbage wrestlers. They only interview like Lawler, Cornette, and everybody hated ECW. But I'm pleasantly surprised that it was the exact opposite, that it did. Like, if that was the end of ECW and that DVD was like our swan song to encapsulate it in that documentary, I would have been so happy. Everybody would have, because it really did not only pay homage to where we made our names. Essentially, ECW, we could still go to a place and people remember us from ECW for the rest of our lives. It's crazy how the urban legend still lives in people's hearts, minds, and souls. But at the same time, too, WWE looked at it after the fact and went, this is like the best-selling DVD that we've had. It was the best-selling, and then for a while it was in the top 3 or top 5. It made them money. So I can't believe that they turned around and saw what they had with the ECW DVD and didn't translate that care put into that with the actual promotion, where they could have made a ton of money with that type of stuff.
I'm just writing something down. I read something on the research for this, but I didn't include it in the format. Is that, when Rob Van Dam talked to Vince McMahon to put on this ECW pay-per-view, and Vince was reluctant at first and said something to the effect of, well, how do I know that the only 2,500 people in that arena or whatever are going to be the only 2,500 ECW fans left? Rob Van Dam's reply was, well, listen to the fans. They chant ECW every hardcore match or any tables coming out or anything. And Vince McMahon's reply was, pal, I conditioned the fans to chant that.
No, he conditioned the fans to try never to have them chant that. He would be visibly angry. I've been in the Gorilla. They chant ECW, and he almost wanted to throw his headset down. So you conditioned the fans to do something that you couldn't stand every single time you heard it. A guy who owns WWE, and give him credit, WWE universe, he wants everything within that. They're not fans, they're consumers, they're the universe, whatever it might be. I always love reminding you about the consumers thing. But you're going to give up your ego just for the ECW chant and not chanting WWE or the talent's name? Give me a break. What a lie. Now, the initial thing, this little Easter egg for everybody out there, it was weird. Now in 2024, it's kind of like it makes sense. Initially, Rob wanted to call it One Nght Stand and pitched it, but Vince wanted to call it One Nght Stand with NDAs. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense back then, but now it does.
Guys, it all just comes out in the wash, doesn't it? I mean, Janelle Grant didn't put it in the civil suit.
It all reveals itself.
It all reveals itself. We're going to stick with the DVD for a quick second. Who fed you the questions and who was producing it?
That I don't know. They had production assistants. So it might have been, and I do believe I sat down for one whole thing because I had the same kind of like, that was during the dress code days where I had to wear like a pullover or shirt or whatever. So it was one PA that had asked, but there was like 3 to 4 people around. And I can't remember exactly. They used to have Kasama there. They used to have the guy. There was a guy that was on Stevie Night Heat that I fired because Goldust took my match. There was one other guy. It wasn't anybody like a Carano or an office person. These were production people that were in there. And of course, we did the 3/4 thing where I look off camera and talk to them as we talk back and forth. Whoever did ask the questions, there was no like, this is going to date my age right here. It was no like a current affair or TMZ type questions where they, I'll use the Simpsons episode since you love that. When they were trying to replace Homer's answers and he was like,
yeah,
and they're like, stop coming at me. Don't hurt me.
It's Godfrey Jones on Rock Bottom. How about that for a reference?
That's right. But the questions were well researched, well thought out. And when they were asking the questions, I knew it was not a leading question to bury the brand ECW, to bury the memory of ECW. And we came out of those interviews with, wow, this might be half decent if Vince doesn't, and it was exactly, if Vince doesn't get a hold of it and start putting stuff on the cutting room, like they almost like Stevie Night Heat, they had to sneak the DVD past them in order to get it produced. It felt very much like Vince had nothing to do with this, if you watch it.
I was going to hazard a guess and ask if it was Tony Chimmel asking the questions, because I think he was involved with some of the DVD stuff, and so was Brooklyn Brawler occasionally, fielding questions.
Yeah, I would remember if it was another worker asking. It was definitely a third party that was in production. It was just because the boys and the people who are involved there was no like ribbing about the question. It was a very serious, tight, like I think they had to get everybody done in one day or that week or something. It was all business from probably, I got there like I said before, like noon. I think they grabbed me after I ate. They did that. I might have went back 4 p.m. for some pickup questions. And I did go back actually for a second round for the extra where I apologized for leaving ECW. I know we're going to talk about that, but that was a standalone type of interview that I requested. And I know it was production people. You know why? Because if I'd asked Brooklyn Brawler or somebody that was in kind of management, they would have denied it. But like I said before, the production people were so accommodating to me. And when I really said, I need to do this because I did it individually, but I feel like I still need to get the closure to talk to all the boys about this. And they did it. And I couldn't believe it even made it, to be honest with you.
Was it on the main thing or was it an extra?
An extra.
I remember that very well. Was there anything that you couldn't talk about, or was it just, as you say, just tightly formatted?
There's no answer I gave where they said, let's do it again. Or can you rephrase that? It was, dude, and I think it comes through, and I'll repeat it probably a few times in this episode. It was one of the most honest, rawly produced documentaries that you can have in wrestling. No tricks, no this, no. I didn't see a whole lot of editing besides like punch-ins and punch-outs or close-ups, and it was what every wrestling documentary should do, the way they did everything with that. And the money and the way the people reacted to it, I think, showed the authenticity of it.
So you said beforehand, very quickly as well, I believe, I couldn't find the answer. I really hate that I couldn't find the answer in the time I had. Someone out there will hopefully be able to give us like unit sales and stuff like that. I believe they tried to make WrestleMania's DVD that year outsell it, or they claim that WrestleMania's DVD outsold it.
Oh,
they
tried they tried for a few. Yeah, there was a lot of WrestleMania was one. They tried. They deep down, the Office and the WWE people, and especially Vince, hated the fact that something that wasn't his creation was the top seller. I mean, if you don't believe that, you're like, there's no way. He's a businessman. Let's just look at WCW when he bought WCW, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a
future episode. That nearly came up as one of the topics I was going to do today, because
I think, because I have some stories about, I remember Cleveland. It was Cleveland, Ohio, where we were at Raw. I remember a lot of different stuff going on that day. And Hunter will back me up on the show and stuff too, because he's already talked about it. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on that day.
5'2" as well, so I'm led to believe. The okay, let's talk about the apology then. So I don't know how many people out there, long-time fans, I imagine quite a lot of them would have actually watched the DVD, and it really was one of the best documentaries they've ever done still. I mean, I put up with like CM Punk's DVD, a few others that were really, really just classily done. And as you say, there was an extra, you went back there, you wanted to make an apology for why you left ECW. I think very briefly explain the injury. We've talked about the injury before, but so what led to you leaving ECW and not returning to ECW and going to WCW instead?
Yeah, there's a lot that went on during this. No excuse, by the way, looking back at it. You can make all the excuses in the world. And that's one of the things you tend to do when you're 23, 24 years old. And this is something like, just to touch on it, I've said it before. Whenever I'm criticizing, saying the young wrestlers in WWE or AEW or anything like that, I give them immense credit as a young person with that kind of pressure for live TV, pay-per-views, being on the road, and also making a lot more money than I did at 23, 24. You might say, well, how's that a negative? When you're immature and you don't realize and you don't have perspective or that maturity, everything can go sideways real quick. How many people too much, too soon, too young, and they go broke and they burn bridges and do all that stuff? I burned some bridges because, number one, I wasn't used to dealing with that kind of injury. And it set off a series of emotional decisions, not logical, because I wasn't sure if I could wrestle again, how long I had. I wasn't making any money. And then there was, the contract stuff with Paul that we can talk about a little bit in more depth about that. But really what it was, and everybody's been there, you make one bad decision, then you're trying to counter that bad decision with what you think is two good decisions to counter the bad decision. Now you have three bad decisions. Then let me do three more of these decisions to cancel out the three bad ones. Now you have six really bad decisions. And that was really what happened. And a lot of times I didn't really have a mentor back then. And I hope today there's a lot of younger wrestlers that have mentors that can give them perspective, or at least present it in a way of a conversation and not just rub some dirt on you, dumb F, or whatever, get back in there, or we work hard, or any of the other stuff. Those are the things that were running through my mind, and they fostered a lot of bad decisions at the time. Plus, and I've been very, very brutally honest with this, and you always criticize me for burying myself, very, very brutally honest about my immaturity, my lack of self-awareness, my lack of awareness within what it takes or what is coveted. TV time, a push, wins, all these things I had no idea, because they really did come at a young age very easily. And some can say for the rest of my career, I paid a penance for not doing good business in ECW. That's why I'm labeled essentially as a jobber, or main roster jobber, or jobber to the stars, or whatever it might be. Maybe that was my penance for the rest of my career for those bad decisions that I made, because I didn't appreciate the TV time. I didn't appreciate the push. I was happy about it, but I didn't understand that when Paul put me on TV, or Vince or Dixie or Joe Coffin or Ring of Honor, any of these things, that it all costs money. It's an investment of time and money into you. And when you're going over and people are putting you over, you do have a responsibility to follow through, work hard back then, work hard, put the most that you can into it. And if you're leaving the company, put everybody over on the way out. I did not do that because the immaturity, and people could say, well, you have every right because your neck was hurt. You didn't have any health insurance. You weren't getting paid more than like $150 or $200 a night at the very most back in ECW. You were working a real job. The WCW contract, was offering you guaranteed money, and you probably could get your neck surgery and they would pay for it. All these things were, and then Raven was going anyway. So like he facilitated me to get a job and reprise my role as a lackey, which I was at the time saying, okay, well, even if I do get surgery, I can be on TV and I'm just a lackey and I'm kind of cutting promos. I can heal throughout the neck injury and buy myself some time. The problem is that's all logical in its own way when it's isolated. But when you look at the entire scope of what was going on in my career and ECW in the business at the time, I did feel an immense regret, and I should apologize. And I carried that around. I still carry it around today, but in a way to say, okay, give yourself a breath, take 10 breaths or whatever you're going to do, count to 10, do whatever, or sleep on it before you make a decision that might be on the scope of the decision you made when you were in ECW. So I learned a really great life lesson there, but I felt like, getting back to the DVD, that the one last bit of penance at least, or contrition, to show who really counts at that time, the boys. And at this point too, by the way, I was back. I had, all the heat from the Right to Censor days and the weight gain and all that stuff, that was gone. But to me, this was that last bit to show the guys that, hey, listen, I know I hurt a lot of people. I know I hurt business, and I didn't do the right amount of business for the people who put me over to get me in the spot that I should have on the way out. And this is me telling the entire world that I made a mistake, and now here I am around my wrestling brothers, my wrestling brethren, and I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so sorry that I made that mistake. And I think I even said it, that kind of mistake will never happen again. And I've made mistakes, but never to the point of that type of just snowball effect.
Are you aware of anybody who's outwardly upset with you going to WCW instead of returning to ECW then? Or is this more like in your own head, you're assuming people were very angry?
Everybody was pissed. Everybody was pissed. Yeah, Taz, Bubba. You got to think too, we really were in a mindset of us against them. And WCW, that was during past the era of the mole and all this stuff, and them cherry picking everybody and stealing talent. WWE was working with Paul, but they were trying to take talent as well. But WCW is outright just trying to steal talent from ECW and then recreate them to whatever. They eventually got a lot of people, including some of the people that were mad at me, but those people still did business on the way out. Taz, Bubba, Paul, and we're going to get to because my theory is, we can talk about right now, I got buried in the new ECW, probably rightfully so, because Paul never forgot what I did to him in ECW. That was the receipt on me. So yeah, everybody was mad. I left Meanie and Nova high and dry with the most successful gimmick that any of the three of us have ever had up to that point. I disappointed and let down and screwed over a lot of people, and that's why I wanted to do that video.
I mean, once again, it sounds like you're being a little too hard on yourself because you did have a neck injury. You do need guaranteed pay as well.
Here's the problem. Here's the issue, and this is me. I try to live in happy mediums in my life, but I find out I can't. And if you look at this studio and our pre and post show throughout the week, I don't half-ass anything. There's no happy mediums. So for me, knowing myself and having the amount of self-awareness that I do right now, and I try to gain a little bit all the time, when I do that and say, yeah, but, to me, that translates into my back almost went out Monday, by the way, working out. So I could have very easily said Tuesday, and then this morning as we're recording this, yeah, I mean, I could do this and that, but my back's hurting, but this, but that. That's what led to the weight gain too. Yeah, it's only 10 days. But I can do more cardio. This case is delicious. But that's what I mean. I can reason with it, but it still doesn't clear me of the charges of the things I did wrong. There's still a way I could have done it the right way.
Do you know, just before I ask this, what would have been the right way then? I mean, could you have just been a manager in ECW for a few months and at least, sort of worked out a notice kind of thing before going to WCW? What would have been a more happy medium for you, with you still getting some, a good contract at the end of it?
I'm not quite sure. Because WCW could have turned around and said, if you don't come in on July 7th, I believe it was, and debut at Raven or any of these other things, then the contract's null and void, like the ultimatum type thing. What I could have done, I don't know. I think the fans would, if I stayed there and wasn't winning, like they were going to put the TV title on me, on the night I was supposed to fight Terry, but my neck was too hurt after that whole deal. So, that whole deal, if I had, I'm just trying to think as we go along, I think the fans might have turned on the BWO sooner rather than later, depending upon what we would have done. Then I could have put everybody else over on the way out. And even if it was just 2 months, then what would happen after that, James? I don't even know. Because to me, my neck was in a point now. And then when I had the surgery on December 22nd, 1997, and they damaged my vocal cords and I couldn't talk for 3 months, there's another thing. I'm looking at that going, well, my God, I can't even be a commentator. I can't even be an interviewer. I lost my voice. You have to think at that point, everything in your career is done. And that's when I came back from WCW and did the match with Chris Chetty before having surgery.
Future episode. Here's the thing, though, is, you seem to be putting too much heat on yourself there in the sense that, well, Raven left. Sabu eventually left. Sandman left. The Dudleys left. Taz left. Everyone left. You were just one of the guys who left.
Yeah. But maybe also let's look at it this way too. You can say whatever you want about Paul, and there's a lot of stuff that's true about the lies and the bounce checks and all that stuff. But I would not be, I say it about Raven, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for Paul. Paul produced me, and as far as producing my promos and guiding me, Paul could do every character. If you just wanted ECW and Paul, and if everybody left, Paul could still do all the characters accurately. He could run, if he could wrestle, he probably would do all the matches. But with Paul, he had patience, which a lot of promoters and bookers don't have patience for talent. He had patience. He disarmed me. He made me feel comfortable in my own skin when doing promos. He featured me. He made a guy with Daisy Dukes and a half shirt a viable world title contender in probably the roughest wrestling promotion that would never like a guy with that presentation, and started out hating me. And somehow Paul massaged the fans to start loving that character. That's all Paul Heyman. If Paul didn't produce me, if Paul didn't guide me, if Paul didn't edit out all the weaknesses, I would never get a booking as an ECW, whatever you want to call me, legend or roster member or whatever, ever. You wouldn't be asking me these questions if Paul didn't make me the name I was back then.
Have you ever spoken to Paul about this one-on-one?
No, never. And I knew with the new ECW, whenever I did make attempts, I made attempts, and I was hoping that that interview would get to him and at least not an olive branch, but open up a line of communication where he can just MF me right to my face if he wanted to. And like, if you want to hit me, Paul, hit me. You know what I mean? That was his life. You know what I mean? ECW was his life and everything he had put into it. So, and one of the guys he put time and money into just up and left. So whenever we had our conversations and whenever things would be done, he would never age in a match. He would never help with anything I'd done in the ECW. He would never care. When I would talk to him, it was always looking over my shoulder, shaking my hand, never looking me in the eye, and just literally wanting to get away from me. So that's why I knew I was never going to do anything in the new ECW, and maybe deservedly so. He got his receipt.
I want to talk more about what do you think the fall of ECW was caused by, but once again, I hate to say future episode because we haven't even got to the show yet, for goodness sake. So ECW One Nght Stand. I remember at the time that the rumor was that One Nght Stand was such a huge success, and I promise you that people were guessing that it'd done 800,000 buys, and then eventually it was revised down to about 340,000 buys, which I think it put it exactly in the middle of pay-per-view performance of 2005, like because there were 15 pay-per-views, I think, that year, because there was still the split brand pay-per-views at the time. It was 8th, so 7 below, 7 above. But that being said, when did you first hear about the rumblings of an ECW-themed nostalgia pay-per-view event?
I would say probably normally we hear about some of these things because this kind of came out of nowhere. I would guess a month to 2 before the actual event, maybe right after they got the building booked, because that's very important. Hammerstein Ballroom, you got to make sure that the date is open for the building. But I would say probably based on the pay-per-view buys too, that we didn't have a whole lot of promotion. And like you said, I think it was sandwiched between 2 pretty big pay-per-views. So now the money, where you're going to put it, you're not familiar with it. And I would say, well, today 340,000 buys would be like WrestleMania level buys in other companies, right? Like AEW or TNA doing 340,000 buys is a pretty big deal, isn't it?
I think AEW's record is just over 200,000, maybe something like that now. But I mean, I was going to say the business is so much more different. But the fact is that wrestling pay-per-views is one thing, but pay-per-views in general, the records have all been shattered in like the last 10 or 15 years, basically, for pay-per-views. So there's still a lot of viability. I'm just looking, actually. One Nght Stand was sandwiched in between Judgment Day and Vengeance. So, yeah.
So it wasn't even 2 major pay-per-views. So it was kind of, well, here's the thing, too. What if, and this could have been a bad thing, because it would have lost a lot of luster. What if the new ECW TV show came back and they had 3 months, 6 months to promote it before One Nght Stand? Now you got storylines and things happening rather than just making it strictly a nostalgia show. Because the one in 2006, if you look at the pay-per-view buys for that, you got Cena versus Van Dam, you got Sabu versus Ray. Who else do you have? I think that 2005 was Eddie and Benoit, but the next year, was it Orton and Kurt Angle on 2006? Yes. You had a great wrestling show. It was a great wrestling show that mixed WWE with ECW.
Yeah, Sabu was 2000. Sabu and Ray was 2006. John Cena Edge was 2006. I think the other big match was Mick Foley and Terry Funk versus, who was it? It was a tag match.
No, it was Mick Foley and Edge, I think, versus Terry Funk and Tommy, right?
That's it. Yeah, and Beulah was there as well. I think they made, and Lita, so they made it a 6-person for a brief period.
Well, they got Beulah out there too, and they had, I think Francine came out too. They had a bunch of run-ins towards the end.
I'm not sure. I believe. I hate to say it's been so long. Future episode 2006, I assure you. Were you excited at the prospect? Well, okay, 2 things really. 1, were you excited at the prospect of an ECW pay-per-view? And 2, did you think that WWE would be as faithful to the ECW product as they really were? 2005 was really faithful to the original vision.
We did when we saw that Shane McMahon was going to be involved. These are all rumors, and from Dreamer talking and Rob talking a little bit. Shane was supposed to be involved with it as well. Shane was a huge ECW fan. This is where they were going to go all ECW, as far as they even talked about before the pay-per-view. I believe they were talking about the TV show coming back, obviously, and other things, house shows, running smaller venues, going back to the ECW arena. As a matter of fact, I worked Punk in one of his first matches at the arena before he debuted on TV for ECW. So, and that was one of my favorite matches too. It's up on YouTube, but it's potato quality. I think it's a flipped camera. Remember the old flip video cameras? So we had high hopes with the way they were talking, but then in the back of our mind, we're like, what happens when Vince, when Bruce, when the inner circle of the S-Men and everybody get a hold of this? It's not going to, if we can get 50% authenticity consistently, we'll be happy. But the one show, even when I walked into the building, I'm like, and I've never been in the Hammerstein Ballroom as far as ECW pay-per-views or TVs, but they were there after I left. But when I walked in, I was like, this looks just like it did on every TV show, every pay-per-view I ever watched from Hammerstein. This is unbelievable. Even the cameras, what they had going on, the Mad, bringing Joey in for the introduction and him getting very emotional. It was all there. It was all there. And I know you're going to ask this question. I was disappointed I did not have a match, but I'll let you ask why I did not have a match.
Well, I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. I want to ask you about the Hammerstein Ballroom as the venue being picked. So I'm presuming ECW Arena, 2300 Arena now, wasn't picked because the capacity was smaller and it was a rundown shithole at the time. So I'm presuming that's why it wasn't
right. Well, the Hammerstein is backstage too, to some degree. But yeah, ECW did not, the arena was not renovated anywhere close to being renovated. Didn't even have bathrooms at the time. Didn't have nothing going on. Not like people today who go there and think that's the ECW arena. No, it's not. But Hammerstein, I think, is more visually pleasing. It looks more unique because it's got the balconies and theater style seating. It's definitely, I think it's a better presentation for One Nght Stand. Plus, that was kind of the last building that they ran towards the end. They ran the Hammerstein a little bit more than the arena from what I can remember.
So we've explained why ECW. I suspect that, with the amount of people who are going to be just backstage personnel, that the Hammerstein Ballroom would be better set up than the ECW arena. Now, you have a segment in the main event, but why did you not have a match?
I think it's serendipity either way. I'll explain why. I was disappointed when they told me I would not have a match because I wanted to have at least an opening match or something there. But if you notice a little Easter egg, when we came out, my right knee is heavily bandaged. At Albuquerque, New Mexico, this was like right after I got my face broken by Chris Masters and everything, and I had come back on TV and Evil won again, and Chris destroyed me in my return. So don't count on me to avenge any losses or any deaths of any family members. So, but I was running in on house shows and attacking Chris out of nowhere. Albuquerque, New Mexico has kind of like, it's not like a ramp, it's more like a slide. It goes like this on a little bit of a curve. Hopefully not like the channel. Hopefully not this channel going down like this. Hopefully that on the way back up. So I was running down to get him, but it was like the fourth or fifth match, something like that. So, wrestlers wet their hair, oil up their bodies, do all that stuff. And it was just concrete floor. And I'm running down to get him and slide into the ring. But I caught the baby oil and the sweat and the spray and the water, and my knees hit the corner of the apron as I slid. Hyperextended my knee, broke a little piece of my kneecap, and did something to the meniscus. So I needed to get orthoscopic surgery, which, by the way, you think, hey, I'm just getting my knee scoped, no big deal. Dude, I couldn't leg extension like more than 10 pounds for like a month and a half. Now I'm up to 20 now, if you look at my legs. But
I was going to say, try tearing your meniscus and then your ACL and your MCL at the same time. Boy, you'll find out you can't. Hey, what
are you, smart ass?
Hey, you won't be doing nothing with your legs for a long time, brother.
It'd be funny as if Tony Guerrero came in right now. I'd be like, hey, you hurt your leg and you hurt your leg. You're going to be a team.
And Zach Gowan's going to manage you.
Why don't we get Shane on just for an hour? You and I talk like Korea the entire time and give him PTSD. Wow, we got a genuine laugh.
Good.
Wow. That's the most you laughed since we started this show.
You said something funny. What can I tell you?
You son of a bitch.
Hey, you're trying to be a smart ass with me, brother.
So anyway, that happened. And then, joyfully having my knee drained on the rest of the house shows and the TVs leading up to One Nght Stand, filling Gatorade bottles at every show with blood. So that's why I came out and did that. And inexplicably turned on Sandman. And by the way, you can also hear my voice is starting to go. The implant is starting to break down. I'm very, very raspy. I can hardly get the promo out. And I was told that was one of the worst promos I ever cut because I could not. I wasn't trained enough with doing anything. And that's why I started, podcasting and doing the YouTube thing because I couldn't avoid it. I tried to. I couldn't afford proper vocal training. So I had to train myself to learn how to talk again. So what you heard there was, man, my voice was about gone. It was pretty bad.
Do you think that Vince McMahon did everything in his power to kill off ECW? We're not talking about the show, the WWE ECW thing, but at the time in 2005, did he just not get it? I mean, did you see Vince at all in gorilla position, and was he baffled?
No, I didn't see any baffled or anything like that. Vince was no-selling a lot of it, not really. Sometimes Vince will react to stuff in gorilla or do whatever, but he wasn't reacting to anything. Would he try to destroy it? You would be like, why would he? But we go back to him buying WCW and what happened after that. So the pattern is absolutely there. I don't know. I think Vince might have been otherwise engaged or distracted with some WWE business, and all the good stuff was left to fall through the cracks instead of the other way around. I really do feel like he was hands off because he was so busy with something else that he let Dreamer, he let Shane, he let everybody do their best work. And look at what happened, man. It's still, I think One Nght Stand 2005, even 2006, are two of the best wrestling and entertainment pay-per-views that they put on in a long time. Not the spectacle that WrestleMania is, but man, from bell to bell, it gave you a variety show of everything you could want.
This might be a stupid question, really, because I know you didn't have a match, and I know there were cheese graters and flaming tables and barbed wire and the whole thing, but was there anything you were told you couldn't do? Because I know there was one F-bomb, and it was bleeped at the end with Eric Bischoff, but was there any other restrictions that you couldn't do?
No, but like you said, my role was very basic. They played the Sandman's real song. You don't get it today, but they played Enter Sandman. They played, Dreamer had the new version of Man in the Box, the WWE version. And the thing with Dreamer is, and I don't know if they did it on purpose, they would get Dreamer's hopes up because Dreamer, say what you want, man, but he loved ECW. He gave everything to that place, whether it be financially, physically, emotionally, all the above. He gave his all, and ECW would not have been where it went without Dreamer. And I'm talking about including Paul, preventing Paul and his negatives from hurting the company and putting it out of business sooner. Dreamer, Shane, Bubba, Taz, they were the lifeblood of the actual company. So Dreamer would get his hopes up about certain things, and I think they would toy with him and take him away. Like they were going to play the licensed version of Man in the Box because they played the licensed version of Enter Sandman. Dreamer, I think, has done an interview. He's told me that he expected that. And then when he came out, I think there's a part there you can visibly see the disappointment in his face that he got the generic WWE version of Man in the Box. And you can see, it's not to make a joke of it, but I'll give you another analogy. You appreciate these. It's like the Simpsons episode where you could see his heart just break. Like,
it's Ralph Wiggum
they
again.
just slow it down. Ralph Wiggum. I'm helping. So, but in all seriousness, like I felt for Dreamer because I was watching that on the monitor and he was talking about, oh, they're going to do the license. They're going to be true across the board. And I think when he came back, he didn't verbalize it too much, but he was just like, they got me again. And that's kind of the story with Dreamer and WWE, that he always wanted to do right by the product, the brand, no matter if WWE or ECW, the talent, whether it's developmental or main roster talent when he was in talent relations. And I felt like they would mess with him to a degree when it came to that.
Well, the thing is that, I mean, it's far more expensive now, but I imagine back in the day, it was still pretty expensive in the mid-2000s to license music. So maybe they just only wanted to do... Enter Sandman's more integral to Sandman's entrance than Man in the Box is to Tommy Dreamer's, because when Sandman came out with that fake music afterwards, the best thing about the Sandman's is entrance, but with Tommy Dreamer, there's more after the sort of song dies down, I guess. But they also gave a fake... was it by Kiss? War Machine. I think they gave a fake War Machine for Taz as well.
No, that was his ECW generic War Machine version. Taz had switched over to that when they went to, I think, TNN and stuff like that. A lot of guys had to go with a different song. But I dare I say, like, Taz's War Machine thing still had his voice and it was personalized. Dreamer was just a generic, like, Barrio. So, but I feel for Dreamer, because those are the moments, and you can say what you want, James. I will defend the talent when it comes to this. Every bit of the presentation, every bit of that means everything for the entire character, the entire brand. There's nothing to be sacrificed. There's nothing to be, you either develop a song that's close enough and condition the fans previously that this is Tommy Dreamer's new music. You don't just debut it that night and they go, man in the, oh. We going to get content ID because I said part of the...
No. Just start singing it.
Okay, just checking.
It might do. What did the regular WWE roster who was in attendance and who may never have been to ECW, what were they making of the whole affair? Now, let's ignore Bradshaw drunk in the balcony for now, because obviously we'll be getting to that later in the episode. How could we not? But what were most of the other talent who were just there as sort of spectators thinking about the whole thing?
Probably the same thing that every wrestler in WWE was conditioned and indoctrinated to believe about the ECW, that we're all garbage wrestlers. It's flaming tables and barbed wire and Taipei death matches. We don't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch and all this other stuff. You can kind of see it, but then there were certain ones, they didn't want to admit they were fans of it, but when they were watching it on the monitor, they were literally popping like fans and reacting like fans and going, whoa. It's like they didn't want to admit they ever watched any ECW, but at the monitor, that facade slipped away. And we did it as talents too, even during the ECW shows when we were in ECW during the time, not One Nght Stand, but when it was a full-time company, we reacted to all that stuff. And we're like, whoa. And they come back and everybody, when something was done like that, holy shit, that was awesome, dude. And I don't think you'll ever get that kind of team atmosphere. I said it before. When you're in ECW, it's almost like being a Marine. You're an ECW guy for life. And when we see each other and things happen and we talk, there's not that, there might be a little bit to people that went to WWE for a long time, but that standard locker room one-upmanship. Like, I want 15 minutes. Well, I want 16. Well, I want 20. Well, I want this. I'm still wrestling 15 years straight on. You know what I mean? There's not that petty, like, I'm better than you type stuff. It really was a team atmosphere. Now, if you screwed up, the good part is people will come up to you and go, what the F was that? They wouldn't give you the silent treatment as they did in Guerrero and WWE. So I think the talent, they enjoyed the show, but I think they felt like they weren't allowed to enjoy it.
Were there any, maybe apart from Bradshaw again, were there any prominent outspoken critics that night?
Most of them probably in that balcony. I wasn't exposed to that. Most of them they probably put up there on TV. That might have been a Vince call to make fun of it, and that's what they were there for. but they couldn't ruin the night for the boys. They couldn't ruin the night for the fans. And I think deep down they're looking around going, man, like there might not be a lot of people here, but if it feels like a 20,000 seat arena, like the energy is crazy.
I also want to mention that a few days beforehand, there was another non-WWE, non-ECW affiliated, because obviously ECW was owned by WWE by that point, Hardcore Homecoming show. It was a Shane Douglas Rand and Jeremy Borash booked ECW Nostalgia show, as well as, called Hardcore Homecoming. It featured some guys from One Nght Stand and also some guys who were not at ECW One Nght Stand, like Shane, Todd Gordon, Simon Diamond, Chris Chetty, Johnny Grunge, I don't think appeared, Too Cold Scorpio. I might get one or two wrong here, but Cronus, Ian Rotten, Jerry Lynn, Raven, New Jack. Now, New Jack was apparently going to try and appear at One Nght Stand, but he couldn't go to New York because of an outstanding legal issue. But was once also apparently considered for the role of the man who stabbed John Cena. And I think it ended up being Carlito in the end, I think. But John Cena was actually out filming The Marine. And then also Terry Funk as well. Funk refused WWE and said he didn't want them making money off of ECW's name. That said, he was at ECW One Nght Stand 2006 and hired by the company by next year. So those feelings sort of didn't last that long, quite frankly. And the one more thing.
Also, they had their own version of Rise and Fall with the Forever Hardcore documentary, I believe.
Oh, yeah, of course. I've never seen it. Was it good?
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. I think it's a pretty long documentary, but it sits there and talks. Jeremy, he produces for WWE now in NXT. That's why some of the cinematic stuff you see, I believe, is he and Jimmy Paradise. They did all the TNA, the Matt Hardy, Broken Matt Hardy universe stuff. They were the first to bring a truly cinematic thing. And by the way, you wouldn't have. I don't think the Bray Wyatt stuff would exist without the precursor of that Hardy stuff that they created. You know, they really sharpened their skills with that stuff.
Yeah, I think The Undertaker versus AJ Styles as well, that cinematic match was a Jeremy Borash thing. One Nght Stand would steal a couple of spots from the Hardcore Homecoming show, including Mick Foley's Barbed Wire and Mr. Socko. So there you go. I'm going to now read. We're not going to be going through every match, of course. We're not going to go through every segment. I'm just going to very briefly say what happened. Chris Jericho defeats Lance Storm in the opener with Dawn Marie. And I think just incredible, and Jason turned up there as well. Then Pitbull Gary Wolfe introduced a remembrance segment for fallen ECW brethren. And even in 2005, there's a fairly shocking number of names, quite frankly. Rocco Rock. So, I mentioned Johnny Grunge, he would die the next year. Eddie Guerrero would die later this year, Chris Benoit in 2007. But Rocco Rock, Terry Gordy, Mike Lockwood, Crash Holly, the original Sheik, Mike Lazansky, Pitbull Anthony Durant, Big Dick Dudley, and Chris Candido, who passed away the month before. I thought it was quite interesting to include that in the main pay-per-view.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that's a Dreamer call. I think I know for a fact because Dreamer came up to me backstage and he wanted me to watch it. And he said, you know, I made sure that Crash was in there and he made sure a lot of the names were in there. And that's one thing I think also that lends credibility to the fact that Vince was very hands off, because that would not have been a Vince McMahon call in the least. And I get Vince's thing. Vince would be like, they're here to have a good time. They're here to, you know, to kind of get away from that kind of real world stuff of death. And Vince has a point, but I think Dreamer should have won out with that and whoever else pitched it, because I think it really added to the nostalgia, and that when you're in ECW, you're in ECW for life and forever after.
With that being said, I was going to talk about Chris Candido. I think just for brevity's sake, we'll leave, I hate to say this, for a future episode, but I do want to talk about the death of Chris Candido. I know there are other guys on that list that we'll bring up again in future episodes as well. I imagine Crash Holly as well, because I know he was a good friend of yours at the time. But we're going to move on. Super Crazy defeats Little Guido and Tajiri. Rey Mysterio defeats Psychosis. Then the SmackDown crew comes in, then they're interrupted by Rob Van Dam, who says, there are no scripts for me tonight, so I don't have to say, you know, dude and cool. And it's a pretty good promo. It's one of those things where he's finally let loose a little bit, Rob. Yeah, but he can't wrestle at the event, which broke his heart. I'm sure it still rankles because his leg was injured. and he couldn't compete. Then there was Sabu, who defeated Rhino. This is Rhino, who had been fired by WWE 2 months before at the
WrestleMania, I believe.
WrestleMania 21 after party, where he had an argument with his wife, I believe. But then he came back for this, and then shortly thereafter, he ends up in TNA. The Raw Crusaders appear. Al Snow introduces ECW highlights package. And then we're going to talk about this. Chris Benoit defeats Eddie Guerrero via submission. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up this match is because there was a lot more going on than just what was in the ring between these two. And was the weight of expectations just a bit too high?
I don't quite know what went wrong, and we don't have a segment for that because these guys are two of the most fantastic workers ever in the history. They have the best foundations, can do amateur, can do your basic pro wrestling, can be very exciting, can be very hard-nosed, can make it look like a shoot. And with that being said, this was kind of on the radar of being almost like a Tully and Shane Douglas shoot type thing where it was uncomfortable pacing. And I watched it back and I was like, everything, it wasn't like anything felt like it tied in together. I don't know if I'm going to be able to kind of like put this into words, but I'm going to try to. When I'm watching it, it looked like each spot, which didn't feel like a spot. It just felt like both guys were either struggling for position, got one move in, did something here. They might have ran a little bit here and there and made it look like pro wrestling a little bit here and there. But as JR would say, it felt like the entire match was tougher than shoe leather. It was just, it felt like a shoot. Now, this isn't like when Kurt and Chris Benoit at WrestleMania had that amazing sequence of just amateur wrestling. Remember the beginning of that match where they were just going at it, and it was, but they were going at it and they were being rough, but it looked like there was a level of cooperation. This felt like just an off night for Eddie and Chris where they just weren't on the same page. And was it a bad match? Not by wrestling standards, but by Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. This might have been one of the worst matches they've ever had together. And afterwards, backstage, it just you felt the tension, the awkwardness. Were they going to fight? No, but it was kind of like you take your tape off, you're not really looking, and then they were talking, and then they were walking, and they were both pacing, and it was just odd. They weren't like talking like they usually talk to each other. It was like Chris taking his tape off, throwing it down on the production box, be like, man, what was that? Eddie's just kind of like pacing, and then they're talking, and then I think like the next time I saw both of them, they were totally fine. But it was just weird. And we've all been there as workers where you're trying to get it back on track, not with a death row, but with another amazing worker. And it's just not, and I'm sure in the back of their minds, this is where the wrestlers, they don't treat it like just another night. You might say whatever about Kevin Nash, but remember, WrestleMania 11 with Shawn, he was like, that was just another night. WrestleMania this, it was just another night. We were on the road all the time. You might think that's a level of apathy. But that, to me, all he says, I'm going to try just as hard as I do on a house show as I do WrestleMania. But I'm also not going to overthink and try way too hard for WrestleMania because it's just not going to translate. And that's what I believe happened. They said, we were in ECW, got started in ECW. They put us on the map essentially before we got hired from these other companies. Let's go out there and just tear the house. That you get all these preconceived notions, these delusions of grandeur when you go out there and you work yourself into a shoot. And that's what it felt like to me. And the more they tried to say, we're trying to do a match that's one for the ages, it starts breaking down. Because you kind of feel they were just trying too hard out there when they could have phoned it in and had the match of the decade if they wanted to. Did you feel that? What's your take watching it?
It's with Eddie and Benoit, right? At the time, it still felt like a dream match, even though you'd seen them wrestle 20, 30 times. That's the crazy thing. It was still a dream match that you've already seen, but it doesn't matter. And I remember it. I remember at the time it just didn't seem to deliver. But obviously, you know, I have not been or never will be a worker, so I can't pinpoint it at all. But yeah, it seemed awkward. Now, there's a couple of theories out there. One, we believe that Eddie Guerrero was pretty unhappy being told that he was losing clean, which he did. So you never know. That could always not help.
Or tapping out, more so tapping out.
Tapping out, indeed. The other thing was is that this is the fans, because the WWE guys had just turned up in the balcony 1 or 2 matches prior. So the fans were more taunting them than paying attention to the match. And then when you haven't got the fans, maybe you work a bit too hard to try and get them back. And then, yeah.
That's a great point. You're absolutely right. You're trying to hit each other harder and do things to get them to turn back around, but it doesn't translate. Even if it is real, like the Mike Rotunda Death Row segment, when it gets more real, it actually gets more boring to a pro wrestling fan. It gets more the pace, the air seemed to be sucked out of the building in a way during that match between them two. It felt like that. Yeah. Let me ask you this question because I'm not sure of the timeline. Did this match take place before or after Eddie became WWE champion?
After, by a year. I think this may have been their, correct me if I'm wrong, this may have been their first singles match since they were both world champion.
Because WrestleMania 20 was when he and Chris had the titles at the end of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, that's 2004. And then 2005...
was One Nght Stand.
Yeah, 2005 One Nght Stand. But this is also goes to my next point, is that this is, I hate to say this is sort of the second big-time match that was a bit of a disappointment with Eddie Guerrero involved. And it was Eddie versus Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania 21. And that was, once again, it wasn't a bad match. It was a very good match. But they subverted my expectations, who remembered the Eddie versus Rey matches from WCW when Eddie was a cruiserweight. But by 2005, you know, he's a lot older. I'm sure a bit creakier. It hurts the joints and everything a lot more. And plus, it looked like he put 100 pounds of muscle on as well. So it wasn't the match that I was hoping to see. And I'm wondering if it's the same for Chris and Eddie in 2005. They're both older. They're both bigger. And maybe, I don't know whether they thought they could recapture the ECW, WCW Japan magic, or they were trying to do something completely different to sort of work around their limitations, if they had any limitations, of course, at that point.
Well, those are all great factors to think about. And I think, number one, you're due to have an off night. And Murphy's Law in pro wrestling is always going to be your off night will be at the very worst time. When you want, and overthinking and overbooking it and over trying to put the match together and not trusting your natural instincts. That we've had matches before that are awesome. And how much did we talk? Like maybe for 5 minutes? Just go out there and do what we do. I dare I say it, if they just went out there, worked towards the finish and just did what they did, it would have been 10 times better. But Eddie, if that's the rumor and it's true, I can understand. You were WWE champion a year before. Now you're here at ECW One Nght Stand, and dare I say you're looking at something. Now, whoever put the match together too, these two guys were both world champions in 2004 at WrestleMania 20, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at that, it's kind of a push that the both of them are a little bit lower on the card at this time. So they probably had something to prove with this match as well. Everything we're talking about, even if 50% of what we're talking about is what they're thinking, they're overthinking it. So, and I mean, it's way past the point of even trying to guess. So I just feel bad for them because these are two guys that took great pride in their work. And back there, I could sense the immense disappointment that they let the fans down and not delivered the ECW classic I think they wanted to give.
I think for the rest of 2005, since WrestleMania 21, Eddie would never win a pay-per-view match again. He would lose to Rey at WrestleMania, lose to him at Judgment Day by DQ, lose to Benoit at One Nght Stand, lose to Rey again at Great American Bash, lose once again to Rey for custody of Dominic Mysterio on a ladder. I always like, Dominic on a pole kind of thing. And then his last pay-per-view match, he lost to Batista. So, I mean, I can imagine, because I believe at the time, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that there was the weight of the world on his shoulders in 2004 when he was the champion. And when you are the champion and business isn't doing so well, you take it more personally. And then 2005, it looks, at least from just the pay-per-view win-loss ratio. I mean, what does that matter ultimately? But from the pay-per-view win-loss ratio, the Office knew it, and they sort of just pegged him down one level. And who knows how much that can affect someone's mental well-being going into a match.
But dare I say it, during those losses you're talking about, especially against Ray, because I'm not sure when he started doing it, his heel persona was awesome. He didn't need a title or wins, and maybe that's why they kept putting people over on him, because they went over, but he constantly got more over. Even the song, you go back to the Dreamer thing, the song, how they remixed the babyface Lie, Cheat, and Steal into the cell phone and the phone kind of like effect with the dude. You talk about one of the most over characters ever. The same character as a babyface, just tweaked a little bit and now full blown heel. He didn't need a title. So if Eddie was, and I feel bad because if I had the perspective and the knowledge and the way of looking at things, and he was frustrated, I was like, dude, you're like one of the most over characters that'll be remembered for years and decades after this. Stop. You don't need the wins. You know, you become a babyface and you're not getting promo time and you're not getting sympathy and you're putting people over. Join me on Heat. I'm right over here because that's where but you're way more over than anybody. Stop.
Yeah, I don't want to say when, the win-loss ratio. That's why I sort of said at the end, it doesn't really matter.
Not with Eddie.
Yeah.
Not with Eddie and that character. No, you could beat him every night and people would hate him.
Okay, one more match we're going to be talking about in some depth, and how could we not, is Mike Awesome versus Masato Tanaka. As we were just saying off air, you don't really know either of these guys, not particularly cross paths with either of them. So you are, do you know, were you backstage watching this live, or is this something you had to watch after the fact?
No, I was backstage watching it. I didn't have a match to put together or do anything. My stuff was pretty simple with the promo, kick on Sandman, and then we'll get into all the stuff I did and didn't do. But yeah, I watched it backstage and I was able to gauge the reactions of everybody, whether they were ECW guys or WWE guys that were back there, and see. And there were two different reactions, as you could probably guess by the legendary, content of this match that we're going to talk about.
Right then. So are you taking us through some highlights?
Yeah, as much as it's going to pain me because these guys really, really worked their asses off. Crazy stuff. All right, so we're going to play it right here and get ready for this. Get ready for this, CTE buffet, as they call it. It's quite special, crazy stuff. Here we go. Boom. Cherish. Now, not only, let's stop. I know it's going to take a while. So he basically rock bottoms Tanaka onto a chair. And Tanaka tends to bump high on his neck and head no matter what. I've noticed that he kicks his feet way up in the air and almost rolls. But we're at a point now, we're in territory of not just regular concussive chair shots, but let's jump off the second rope and do them. Right here. Boom. And he just crumbles. Let's do a DDT through a table, not just regular DDT, which I would say in a way, oh, not that one. Look, a regular DDT has a way of being at least a little bit more dangerous than going through a table, unless you get spiked for real right there. He just rolls over. This here, in theory, a power bomb off the top rope where Mike Awesome needs to basically go backwards and sit out, which he does an excellent job. And for some reason, it cut off. But with that, the table's already broken, by the way. Look, table's already broken, and they're going to do a power bomb through a broken table that has like splinters and everything there. And it just takes an immense amount of trust here. But what we're watching here too, James, people might think, well, they went to a hold. They did this. They did that. It settled down. No, it was one right after the other of concussive shot. Here's a regular, there is a wrestling move thrown in here. My God. Belly to belly. Now, you know what the reason I put these two in here? Because when they just wrestled and did stuff, especially Mike Awesome for his size, incredibly impressive. This right here, to do a shoulder block over the top rope as clean as anything. Looks great. Then the dive, which is really dangerous. Look at his head right there near. Wow. That's almost like the guardrail on my neck right there.
Mm.
Look at that. He actually did. Nope, he grazed it. He's lucky.
Did ECW have a particular issue with not having that much floor space between the ring and the guardrail, or is that all wrestling promotions at the time? Because I seem to think that WWE has a lot more space now.
I think more so with this show, they were packing people in. I don't know what the fire marshal said could come in there, probably paid them off. They always did it anyway. But they were trying to get as many people in the building as possible. And yeah, usually with ECW, there wasn't enough room. There wasn't much room. And now people are spoiled because the sets are so big. The space is so big. The commentary's there. Yeah, I think during this time, a lot of shows on TV and pay-per-view did have basically this much room right here, not much more. So let's go right here. Now, this isn't bad, but it's still bad. He just look at that. That's real. People talk about my chair shot on Bradshaw. I mean, there's like Bradshaw chair shots in this entire match. Right there. Bent the chair. And look, he hit the back of the chair too, dude. See right there?
His palm's actually on the seat of the chair, so just to make sure that it has as little give as possible.
Yeah, you don't want it's like zip ties with balls. You don't want people to think it's fake. This here, I was backstage during this power bomb to the corner of the outside through the table that was propped up against the railing. I thought he killed him. He threw him off of this too. Like, just let him go. Look. I mean, that's like my Heidenreich bump off the electric chair. Mm-hmm. That's dangerous. His foot is touching the table. His knee is touching the table as his head is still going through the table. Can you say Twister? Have you ever played the game Twister?
Oh,
yeah. Well, if somebody can Photoshop a Twister board on the table, that's what he just did. And that's not selling, dude. That's not selling. That's Tua taking a sack in the NFL. It's just now let's go back to a wrestling move. This is what I don't understand. These guys are immensely, especially awesome for his size. He can do a frog splash every bit as good as Eddie Guerrero, as Rob Van Dam. Definitely better than the Usos. Look at this. There's that camera cut from the Savage Elbow. It's great to be able to cut on impact. And dare I say it, it's probably the lightest move he can do. Like, he took care of him. There he is right there. Regular power bomb. See, that's what I don't understand. The highlights, they might be out of order, but I don't think they are. He power bombed them from the apron through a table and just folded them in half. Then he does a regular power bomb. This is where, for everything Mike Awesome could do athletically and physically, he had zero psychology. His psychology sucked. This is your, what would you consider this as far? This is not your main course. This is like eating your ice cream first before the main course. It makes no sense. And that's what makes me feel bad, because they made their mark here, but what memorable moments did Mike Awesome and Tanaka ever create? You could say, oh, well, I remember they hit him with a chair, might have power bombed through, might have did this, or you remember when I show it, but what moments did they create? Like when I talk about Eddie Guerrero, and I said, remember when he was a heel and the song, you're like, oh, whoa, I remember Lie, Cheat, and Steal with the cell phone and all. Like you remember the car, you remember the lowrider, you remember Dominic, custody of Dominic, as silly as it might be. You remember Latino Heat. You remember him giving the rose to China and all that. Those are moments that have nothing to do with what we're looking at right now. You were going to say something.
I was going to say something. When you said, what do you remember from this match? And I remember, I remember Total Carnage, blah, blah, blah. And then until I watched it, I actually couldn't pinpoint one single move Other than that, I know that chairs and tables and power bombs and splashes and everything else were involved. But you can't actually. It's like the entire match is one moment. If you're pinpointing a moment,
it's a blur. It's a blur of moves contained within the bell ringing in the beginning and the end. That's it. And what I'm saying is these guys did a disservice to themselves because this match and the bumps they took and the chair shots, the concussions, the injuries. Matter of fact, I think when he dove on Tanaka at the end, when he powerbombed him over the top, another powerbomb over the top rope through another table. When he dove, I think he tore his tricep, bicep, or he hurt himself doing this dive. It was just like, oh, but did it sell an action figure? Did it sell a t-shirt? Did they get any kind of residuals off of this that made it worth it? No, I don't think so. We watch it now, but it's like you just said, man, it was an awesome match. What do you remember about? Well, I guess he hit him with a chair. He went through a table. Then, hit him with another chair.
I remember more Bradshaw yelling in from the balcony, kick out again. And then
like they're laughing and clapping, right? Like, yeah, kill each other. I remember that. He was like, oh my God. And they're goofing on it, right? But that might be fans at home. The fans that do this on the sofa and everything, they're just good. Like, there's no emotional, like, wow. I mean, Tanaka is such a, like, I don't know. It's just,
it's a tough man contest, almost. It's like, who can.
This is just basically, this is throwing the Christians to the lions and everybody in the Coliseum enjoying it, right? I just want to see somebody die. Yeah, here's powerbomb. Here's chair shot. I don't know why he's putting his hand up in front of his mouth, but it didn't really work. Unprotected. Now, here's where I know this is his thing. After all the punishment you did, now you're going to get him with the 10th chair shot or whatever many, and he fires up. And gets up. Now it's just moves. Even here, safe, but then hits him with that right there, then drops an elbow. So 3 different, like crushing him with the chair. And what is awesome, gets up and these are going in order as far as I understand and watched. Like and there's not like 2 minutes of selling between this. Now Spear is awesome, but he hit his head on the chair. They're trying to use these chairs for everything. There's another chair shot, the one we saw in the beginning.
Do you not think occasionally for a big show like this, it's nice to have like a palate cleanser, just a non-stop, non-psychology match? Because, every match to a point is going to have some sort of psychology. So occasionally, is it just nice to have a stunt show to just break up the format of every other match?
Well, the palate cleanser has to be a regular match, or they usually put something like a comedy match or entertainment or a segment in the ring. This is exhausting. This isn't a palate cleanser. This is like, oh. All right, now the next match comes out, try to tell a story, and you're like, all right, let me just recover from that. Now, I don't know if they did a segment after this that had the people reset. But no, this isn't a palate cleanser. This is a stunt show. But right here, powerbomb through the table, which he almost hit his head on the railing. Now, what the point of this is, I don't know. I'm going to headbutt you in the balls. I met Mike backstage at the show, and he seemed like a very kind, easygoing guy. And you said in the notes, he seemed like a lovely guy. Nobody ever said he was a bad guy. But this is just stupid. The whole thing is dumb. And count it out right there. Once again, too, look at this. The finish happens where 3/4 of the people can't see the finish in the audience. Mm-hmm. You could have done this spot even in the ring.
Do you think that did you listen to the commentary?
Well, yeah, because Joey said, Joey was like really playing up that Aweome had left. He had famously left ECW as world champion, went to WCW. Then they did that weird match where Taz came in from WWE, won the title from Aweome. Aweome went over the railing and left because it was, you want to talk about awkward. I mean, Eddie and Chris were nothing compared to that situation. And then Joey was cutting a promo basically the entire time on how much of an asshole and a traitor and a Benedict Arnold that Mike Aweome was. And he was like, suicide dive. I hope he's successful. All these kinds of things are kind of out of pocket. But Joey was saying the things I think that every ECW diehard fan said about Mike Aweome when he did that. Is that kind of what you were referring to?
Yeah, basically. I was sort of thinking that, you thought you had heat. I was like, damn, Joey Styles was like absolutely out for murder with Mike Aweome at the time. But that being, I mean, it was a completely different set of circumstances. I believe he was still ECW champion when he signed with WCW. So,
Oh, he was squashing everybody. He was my run times 10 with the title. Like he was killing everybody. So he only did that one job after he was out already with Taz, and that was it. And we're talking about a quick switch, Taz mission, out the door, and you're done, like 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And getting up and leaving after getting choked out was also that last, like, you didn't even lay in the ring. I understand it was a dangerous situation for people in 2024 that don't understand, like, why did the fans take it so seriously? Because nobody seems to today. Back then, people were out for blood in ECW. It was about as real as it could get as far as the way the fans treated it. And if you turned your back on them, if the guys in the ring didn't get you, the fans would try to do it. So that's why he kind of up and left.
Yeah, through the fans as well. He never went to the locker room. He just sort of like walked out from his car with his trunks on, then just walked straight back out through the fans again. Now, the next segment is Paul Heyman coming out and says, apart from the fact that he said he wasn't crying, his eyes were red because he was smoking a joint with Van Damme. And then he says two things of amusement. He says that JBL, the only reason he was WWE champion for a year was that Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays.
All 5'2" of them.
All 5'2" of them. And then to Edge, hide your wives, it's Edge. And then he says two words, Matt freaking Hardy. And then the only thing that Edge does during this was he turns around and goes, that was three words. But
as he spit his beer up, acting like he was doing the spit take. I think I'll give a little backstage on this, because I believe there was some kind of edict put forth that you could not mention Matt Hardy's name, you could not do anything on TV, and that was Paulie's middle finger to Vince and that entire thing. Because why would he just say it like that? Because it was like the elephant in the room. Nobody was talking about it. Matt had been released, but I think they were starting to talk to Matt about coming back, and he came back not too long after that by jumping Edge. So, but at the time, I believe it was one of those things like banned words, banned things. The band name was Matt Hardy at that time.
Is it worth us talking about this more, or should we leave this? Because we've got like three different segments. This can be for say it with me.
Future episode.
Should we do future episode on that then?
Yeah. We should. I can't wait for prowrestlingtees.com/Stevie Richards, the future episode shirt.
Well, you have to make it. Or can you get some guy to make it for you?
I think just text what our font is enough for anybody.
I'll make it
if I can get a picture. Hey, if I get a picture of a DeLorean or John Teeter or somebody on there, I'll do that. Hey, by the way, side note, the Watcher YouTube channel, I know you don't want to promote our ones. I love the Y-Files, and a lot of people talk about, they love the Y-Files as well. Watcher with Ryan and Shane I'm stealing their studio ideas, their presentation. They are so good at everything with how they do stuff.
I have never said that I don't like you promoting other YouTube channels.
You did off camera.
Did I?
Yeah.
No. When did I say this? I'm interested now.
Maybe today. I don't know.
Oh, well, maybe for the Patreon people, tell me what you...
Hey, go check out HaHa's channel too. HaHa.
How do you spell that? Jeff. JARREW. That's how you spell it. Oh, I thought.
How did Vince spell it at the? How did Vince spell it at the? He might have smelled it too. How did Vince spell it at the simulcast? FIFRREDD. Fired.
Nice. Man, were you there for that night? You were there for that night, weren't you?
Cleveland, Ohio. Yes, I was
right.
there.
Future episode. But I promise you that is going to be a future episode. I absolutely promise you that. It might even be next week, in fact.
But we've run out of ideas. How are we going to have
all these
episodes?
ideas that we just keep running out of, I tell you. I mean,
we leave not enough ideas and no smart board anymore. How dare you?
Yeah, when are you going to bring that smart board back? I mean, I
have no idea. We're a future episode.
Yeah, future episode. We've only had like 30 segments. It might as well not exist, quite frankly. Right, let's go to it. The main event, Dudley Boys. I don't know if I said this about Rhino. I think I did. That was his last match in WWE for like a decade. This was also the Dudley Boys' last match in WWE for over a decade. They go to TNA. Then they would be Team 3D. They defeat the Sandman and Tommy Dreamer. Pinned Dreamer, the Dudley Boys did, after a powerbomb through a flaming table. But we're not interested in the match itself. We're interested in the post-entrance of the participants of this match. But before the match, before the bell rings, you come up. You turn out with the BWO. So you
knee taped up and everything.
You taped up and everything. You were injured, but then talk about the process of who came up with the BWO to make this a triumphant return after all these years.
Well, that's obviously a Dreamer call. I think Dreamer had a big hand in it. Shane had a hand in it. I'm sure Paul had a hand in at least that. I don't know if Paul booked the show. I don't even know who created the matches on the card. I don't know who booked the card, but we were definitely booked for that. I already knew we were going to have a spot, not a wrestling spot, not a match, but a spot. I believe, you know what? It wasn't really exactly cemented until that night or that afternoon. And this is the best thing about being around the boys and being a part of ECW. The guys in the match wanted that in there. Sandman, Dreamer, and the Dudleys wanted that, and obviously the run-ins and all the other stuff, but they wanted that because they felt like the BWO, we're not in there, match after match. The main event comes up, the entrance happens, you got everybody in the ring, the match is about to start, and people are almost thinking, there's people in the crowd with BWO shirts, might have been thinking maybe after the end or something, but they gave it to them. And obviously Joey laughing and saying, like you said here, talk about a gimmick that it basically said, talk about a gimmick that made a boatload of money and had no reason or right to or something. And best part, they couldn't sue us because it was a parody and stuff that might have changed today.
Well, they being WCW and the BWO being a pastiche of the NWO, of course. But apparently because it was a parody, that WCW Turner had no legal recourse to sue you for royalties or trademark infringement.
Thank God, because I didn't have any money at that time. So that's a good thing for me. But with that being said, we come out, Joey laughs. How I initially felt about the commentary, I wasn't actually happy about it. And Joey and I are super tight. We're almost like brothers. I wasn't happy about just the laughing about it and everything until in context I heard the whole commentary for it. It's like, oh, okay, it's like a thumbs up, or you're thumbing your nose up at WCW, Bischoff, and the system and everything. But my initial reaction is Diego Overworker. When I first watched it back, and I'm like, why is he laughing? I'm just giving my honest, raw reaction to it, where I'm like, we're coming out, and we're serious. But then I said, oh my God, like, I'm wearing Daisy Dukes in a half shirt, and so are the R2. What am I thinking? Of course. So, he says that. We get in the ring. You can hear my voice is about shot. I do the word taking over and then turn around, and for some ungodly reason, it has no psychological sense, Stevie kicked the Sandman. I don't know. I didn't ask any questions or anything like that. I did it. I love Bubba too, because this is where Bubba, you got to look back. When we come to the ring, Bubba walks right up and faces off with me. When they come to the ring, I think Bubba's doing stuff and trying to get the Sandman and telling him, come on, as he's in the balcony. Bubba knows how to get his stuff in and get himself over and position himself. And that's what he's good at. So, and that also, to me, like looking back on it in hindsight 2020, when Bubba did that, that was great. You know why? Because people probably thought I would kick him because he got in my face. So whatever reason, psychology-wise, that kind of was the swerve. We did that. Then it becomes a crowded area. Then Balls and Axel, I think, come out and do the chair shots. Then Kid Cash comes out and then does the big, running dive on everybody. I might have missed a couple things here and there, but everybody was out there. He does, and that wipes everybody out. And then we go back to the match, and then Dreamer gets his eardrum screwed up with the cane shot from the back of the head. The cheese crater, I don't know how you work that. I don't even want to know how you work it. And then, of course, the flaming table power bomb on Dreamer. That's another thing, too. Going back to the Tanaka Awesome match, they didn't understand enough to look at the psychology of the card and ask the main event, what are you guys doing? What's going on here? And so what they did meant nothing, because to finish through it, you were lighting a table on fire and doing the same power bomb and making it in the finish. So they outshined that entire match. That's why I believe that's more memorable than the Awesome match.
With there's one thing when they were doing the run-ins at the beginning, and Kid Cash runs out, but no one quite knows who he is. So I don't know if it's Mick Foley or Joey Styles goes, "That's Kid Cash, I believe." But they have to take like a few seconds to realize who it is, and then he sort of exits immediately, and then afterwards he does the big sort of flip dive over it.
Well, Cash was, talking about a guy that never got his due, especially in WWE. Dude, when he was doing the stuff with, it was with Lance Archer, with Lance Hoyt.
Lance Hoyt, yep.
Remember?
Yep.
He was Dallas back then or something, right? He was a different name.
No, he was Lance Hoyt in TNA with Kid Cash, I remember. I was watching the pay-per-views at the time. His name.
Dude, Cash had such and probably the office and the art talent in charge didn't appreciate the fact that he could talk. I believe he could talk people in the building. He had and when he went to WWE, and I was like, this is going to be great, especially being Cruiserweight champion, being a smart mouth. So, what is smart house? And he could just talk like somebody you wanted to beat up, but almost you ended up liking him because, man, the dude doesn't back down from anybody. He'll talk shit to anybody. I like that, and WWE never knew what to do with that guy.
Just briefly with Kid Cash, he always reminded me of Owen Hart. He always had that kind of like sneering Owen Hart face, I thought, and it looked more like when he had the long hair, I always felt, but maybe that's just
He very much had like the Johnny Swinger crash pad face. That's what I would call it. No way, brother. Not today. Doesn't work for me.
Doesn't work for me, brother. Could you hear Bradshaw taunting you from the balcony while you were doing the BWO promo?
No, I couldn't. And that's a shock because he's got a pretty big mouth. But the crowd was rumbling. There was a base level noise throughout the entire night where the fans, there was a stir, there was energy. Even when stuff wasn't going on, it was still an energy amongst the fans.
So, mentioning Bradshaw, I've mentioned him a few times.
And if he was goofing on me, that's not why I hit him with the chair. So there you go.
We'll figure that one out soon enough as well with the chair. That's going to be the main event of this show. So JBL versus...
No, we're doing a future episode because we're going to end with the meanie stuff, right?
No. We've got the meanie, and then we've got chair shot heard around the world. We're squeezing it in. We've got time.
I thought we would have a smart board on that.
Do you want a smart board on it?
Not really. I think it speaks for itself.
Fair enough. Then we can just B-roll the stuff, and I don't think that's too big of a deal then. Right, so JBL and the Blue Meanie. Very quickly before we talk about the Bradshaw Meanie initial heat, whatever that might be, how soon before One Nght Stand was Meanie contacted to come to the show? Do you know?
I think like probably 2 to 4 weeks would be it wasn't like last minute. BWO was figured in some way, but I have to say conservatively, it'd have to be on the short end, 2 weeks, maybe a month, not like 2 or 3 months ahead. It was all within like getting through whatever it was, Judgment Day. And now we're heading towards One Nght Stand.
Now, Simon Dean, he was at the time. Mike Bucci, he reverted back to Nova, Supernova, and then Hollywood Nova. For BWO at the time, he was with WWE. Was Meanie ever figured in with maybe getting a contract, or was this always just going to be a one-shot affair?
As far as I know, a one-shot affair until what's about to happen
Okay, then.
happens.
So, what was the initial heat between Bradshaw and Meanie, if you're aware of any?
I'm only aware from the stories I heard Meanie tell about it, after the fact, is because he did an RF Shoot interview and he called Bradshaw a bully. And he might have shared some details about, Bradshaw messing with him or whatever, but he basically said that Bradshaw was a bully, and that set John off.
Was Bradshaw possibly drunk that night?
Well, they kept shooting these guys drinking all night. I don't think he was nursing the same beer. I don't know. That's pure speculation. But also, there was, just moving forward, there was the possibility of a lawsuit, and that's my educated guess as to why Meanie had a temporary short-term contract.
Oh, it was some sort of, I see what you mean, a quid pro quo kind of thing and a decent payoff.
Well, okay. We'll get through this, and then I'll give my theory because it's attached to the timeline of the chair shot.
So after the match, after Tommy Dreamer is pinned, and then it's the ECW guys facing off against all the WWE guys who were taunting the ECW fellas through pretty much the second half of the pay-per-view. And I figured this was a Vince McMahon call, just to get interested, get some WWE fans interested into an ECW pay-per-view and, what would happen if they all go against each other. And that is what they did at the end of the show after the match.
And who am I looking to punch in this? Who am I stretched out with everything I got? I'm right here in the middle.
Is that Basham?
It might have been Doug Basham, yeah. It might have been Doug Basham. I even put Carlito through a table. I dumped him over the top. Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah, I got my stuff in, dude. No way. That was my time to shine, baby. But this is what we're talking about right here, all the way in the back. Now, I think Meanie had said, because he thought he was working, and you're talking to Bradshaw, who's already mad and already might be hopped up, if you know what I mean. He already might be in an aggressive nature. And Meanie's trying to talk it up. And I saw an interview he did, and I might be misquoting him slightly, but he goes, "Come on, Cowboy, you want to go? You want to go?" And I think he said, "Cowboy, you want to shoot?" or something that he was hoping the fans would hear to make it look real. And Bradshaw obliged him. So here we go. There's Meanie. Bradshaw is looking for him. Now, also in this way, I believe before this even happens, Al Snow is trying to get between them. Al Snow has told that story. He was trying to get between them he saw John's eyes and he saw the way it might have went down, and Al was trying to get between them, but John got past him, and there he goes. Got to give it to Meanie, though. Meanie took some good shots, and he stayed on his feet. There he is. He got him right there with that punch. Now, he's got Meanie still. They're right there in the middle, right here.
Yeah, I want to apologize I'm sorry for interrupting, Stevie. I want to apologize for the sort of cutting of between the clips, because the camera keeps cutting. So what I've done is I've taken out all the camera shots that doesn't feature Meanie and Bradshaw. So that's why it might be a bit sort of stop-start and weird.
Oh, look at me. I'm over here on the left. Look at this guy. This young up-and-comer. Bam, I'm going to punch you. I'll show you. Oh. See, those are not like Seth Rollins. I'm actually rearing back.
Is that Tyson Tomko in the right?
Yes, it is, right here.
There you go.
That's Tomko.
We actually talked about Tyson Tomko on Storytime with Dutch Mantel this past Monday that's returned. I just thought I'd mention that.
I mean, he's got a little bit of a headlock, but I don't think this is going to make John calm down. I think it might make him angrier. Oh, that's a shot right there. Right in the jaw. You got to give it to Meanie. He's closing the distance. He's not taking any shots where John can get all the momentum. And Meanie's fighting back. I mean, Meanie's fighting back in a work sense. There's Edge. Now, John's got blood right on his shirt. And that's Meanie's. Meanie's got his face busted open pretty good.
Now Meanie's actually in the top right-hand corner. You can't see him because of a couple of red shirts in the way, including, I don't know if one of them's, I think one of them might be Snitsky, there because he looks bigger than William Regal. And
the
other one is friend of the show, Maven Huffman.
There's Maven. Future episode of WSI. There we go. That's C.W. Anderson right here. There's Chetty. There's Swinger, maybe. There's Roadkill. And there's me with that actual tricep at the time. I'm stomping somebody. There's Danny Doring. There's Swinger. There's Meanie's face right there. Can't really see it, but
there's footage.
He's definitely
there's footage at the end. But if you zoom out again, try and find Bradshaw. He's in the bottom right-hand corner. It seems that Tracy Smothers.
I see him right there.
Yeah.
Tracy was mad about it too. Yeah, Tracy, rest in peace, wanted to fight him after this. So, yeah, he's just. I don't think anybody really is aware, James, of what really happens. It's a surreal thing that is this really happening? And it's already done by that point. You might think this is going on forever, but this is less than a minute that you have here, 56 seconds in total, less than 2 to 3 minutes total for everything going down. There's Bradshaw. Oh, you got a split screen. Thank you. There's Al. I think Al's asking Meanie if he's okay. Meanie's talking to him.
But Sandman's now got Bradshaw as well. So I'm wondering if Sandman knew and he basically got the canes help restrain. But Meanie sort of has the wherewithal to get to the other side of the ring as far away as possible. And also, this isn't in the video, but Bradshaw is the last person in the ring until about 10 of the ECW guys basically just usher him off. And it's Bubba Ray Dudley who sort of like pushes him gently back towards, where the rest of the WWE guys are outside.
Yeah, Meanie took some shots, man, and stayed on his feet and stayed like with it and keep doing stuff. You can say whatever you want, even with the gimmick that he had and anything. Professional wrestlers as a whole are tough. And in that situation, whether it's scripted or not, and somebody's roughing you up and you can take it and stand there, and this obviously was not scripted, but I think Meanie, like when it started, you're like, oh God, I'm in it. And Meanie didn't back up. Meanie stayed close to him, and Meanie stayed paired up to him and tried to do whatever he could to finish, I guess, the segment off. What are you going to do at that point? And then in the back, there was arguing back and forth that I witnessed, and John yelling at Meanie about something about that interview and calling him a bully and all that stuff, which is okay. I mean, what did you do to disprove the point of that? You know what I mean? That's the way a normal person would think, right? Not crazy wrestlers. So, but these guys these guys now, I said it before, these guys are friends, are actual friends, and it's a strange business. After all this is said and done, Bradshaw's trying to get Meanie a spot in the Royal Rumble in Philadelphia. Bradshaw's getting Meanie tickets. They're taking pictures together. They're talking. Who knows if they're still texting on the phone and doing whatever. It's a funny business. A year from now, I could be like, hey, did you catch the workout video Triple H and I are selling for people 5'2" and above?
I was going to say, I can't believe, Stevie, you really are a foot taller than Triple H. Are you... Well,
he's a fine gentleman. How dare you?
You're in the backstage then. So if you could flesh out that, I mentioned Tracy Smothers. He was angry. There was a confrontation or a further confrontation, or at least some yelling back and forth backstage. Anything else you can sort of add to that? Was it Tracy Smothers who would basically, I think he would go about on the indies sort of like challenging Bradshaw to a fight at some point?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, he would. Tracy's no pusher. Tracy's a super tough guy. So that whole thing, and he loved the Meanie, and Meanie loved him, and, for Tracy to stand up for him, I don't know. Like, when it came back, like I said, the whole night was surreal, for good or bad, and obviously this isn't the good part, but for good or bad, the whole night was taking a time machine back to ECW. Then this was, where are we? What are we doing? This is not pro wrestling. This is legitimately the weirdest, most surreal, awkward moment that I had up until that point. Then in the back, they're yelling at each other. And to his credit, Meanie went right up to him too. They were face to face. So
to close out this show, yes, I know it's not ECW One Nght Stand. And yes, I know that Stevie and I have talked about this when he came on WSI the first time. But damn it, that clip did nearly 300,000 views, and I thought maybe we could replicate that success on this channel. Why not? Let's have a go. But playing off the Meanie attack by Bradshaw, shortly thereafter, there is a match between Meanie and Bradshaw, one-on-one on WWE SmackDown. Before we get to that match, you were saying, and I think you wanted to expand upon it, that Meanie's deal was probably only going to be a one-off, and then all of a sudden it's got a bit longer after the sort of post One Night Stand brawl. What do you know about that? And, any contract extensions or any olive branches, to help Meanie see his way to not suing the company?
Well, that's the main point that Nova and I, that was our guess. We're speculating, but anybody's guess with common sense would probably be after that, the beatdown in the ring, the unsafe work environment, the potential alcohol consumption in the balcony the entire night being filmed, that there would be a viable lawsuit. There would be a credible lawsuit based upon that. And Nova and I knew. And then when Meanie told us, hey, guess what? They're bringing the BWO back and we're going to come back and do this. And I don't think he knew he had the match with Bradshaw until that day. So he had to meet with Vince and Bradshaw. He tells the story in greater detail than we do. I wasn't present for that. But the second we heard Meanie say, hey, guys, we're getting the BWO back together. We're going to be back on TV. Nova and I looked at each other and said, they're only bringing him in to do work, maybe with Bradshaw, or at least being in the same locker room. And when they demonstrate that it's safe, he does not have a case for a lawsuit against WWE. And that's exactly what this SmackDown match shows, that John is not going to hurt me. It is not an unsafe work environment. He got in the ring with him. John was totally fine with him. John put him over, as a matter of fact, clean. So what basis do you have for a lawsuit after that? And right after that match, they gave us a little something with the Mexicals. Then we were gone.
On the big wheels, I seem to remember as well.
The big wheels, yeah. David Benoit and Dominic Mysterio. Before he was Dirty Dom, he was big wheel Dom.
On a pole. He was still on the pole. He hadn't been retrieved by Rey Mysterio.
We were fighting for custody of the big wheels after that.
With that being said, could WWE actually be liable for lawsuits when they are? Yes, we know it's simulated violence, but obviously accidents happen all the time. I mean, could WWE have just easily argued that, well, hey, things happen. It's a rough business.
Well, I don't think so, because there were 10 to 15 other wrestlers, if not more, that were in that ring.
But would they have actually gone against WWE and testified against them?
No. What I mean is, when you look at the tape, when you look at the video, there's 10 to 15 other wrestlers or more paired off, throwing punches and doing things, and John is actively seeking out only one person, and that is the only person that was being bloody in the entire brawl. Nobody else was injured. Nobody else was beaten up, bloodied, busted open, any of those things. I'm just looking at it from, if you take that to court, that's without Meanie coming back, sharing a locker room with John, sharing a ring with John, sharing physicality with John, and then John beating Meanie up. Or not beating Meanie up, John putting Meanie over. So if John really had that much of an axe to grind, why would he do business with him? There's all these different, like I said, it's all speculation, but you can look at it, look at the timeline, look at the potential lawsuit between One Nght Stand and Meanie coming back to WWE for a short time, and say, yeah, obviously there's some kind of potential for a settlement at least. But they appealed to Meanie's pro wrestling ego, brought him back with the gimmick, and he probably got a bunch of bookings based off of that. And like I'll repeat a million times, probably after you talk about the chair shot, these two get along great. So such a funny world we live in, where this seems like an alternative like timeline or universe compared to where we're living in now, or the opposite.
So I believe when I interviewed Meanie, he said that him and Bradshaw went off in a room on their own. I think he joked somewhere that, he was surprised that there wasn't, plastic sheeting up the walls and on the floor, to contain all the blood supply.
Lethal Weapon
Yeah,
scene.
the American Psycho deal. And if Bradshaw started talking about Huey Lewis in the news, that's when he really knew he was going to be in trouble. But no, it turned out not to be that. It was handshakes and apologies, and there were no problems between us, or on Bradshaw's side anyway. And he was going to be a total pro out there. When did you find out that Meanie was actually going to be the one with his hand raised at the end of this? And were you surprised, quite frankly?
No, I wasn't. I found out probably right after Meanie when we were talking a match over, because obviously John has to come to us because there was physicality on me on the outside, on Nova on the outside. We did the whole thing with spray painting BWO on the limo, coming out in the limo with John in the ring. We kind of bookended the show. It wasn't the main event, but it was towards that. So that was, everything needed to be talked about. So there was a lot of discussion and conversations. We did a rehearsal with the limo, and there was some other stuff. We might have rehearsed the placement of certain things during that match, because I had physicality with Orlando Jordan towards the end as well. So there had to be communication. So throughout the day after it was booked, after Meanie went into a room with him, I think Vince was involved, or Triple H. I think it might have been Triple H or Johnny. There was some third party involved to reassure Meanie and then get John and get them in the room together and have them talk it out.
We'll get to the chair shot then. Before you went out there, did Bradshaw say anything to you like, lay it in, brother? Or, was it just a tacit agreement that you knew what to do?
Well, shaking our hands, thank you guys. Let's have fun out there, all the standard fare for that. Now let me remind you, I've had my run-ins with Bradshaw during the right to censor and being roughed up by the APA. There's certain things that happened to me where I was always very apprehensive of Bradshaw. And to this day, if I bumped into him or said hello, I would say hello. I'd probably keep it brief and cordial, but I have my walls up and I have my guard up with many people in wrestling, whether on a physical or an emotional level. I keep arm's length with a lot of these people. The people like I said before, that I'm friendly with, I talk to all the time. So I did feel like seeing them or talking to them every day. So when he did that, I didn't think there was going to be any kind of swerve. Now, Meanie was a little suspicious, like, when we get out there, is WWE setting me up, or is it going to be some kind of screw job going on? Which is a natural kind of thing to think about. You're in no man's land out there. You're on their turf, their territory. Anything can happen. You can mask it to look like an accident, whatever. But John, deep down, even though that was a very much a lapse in professionalism, he was about as professional as you can be. It was about the lightest he's ever been, because obviously they told him probably to be extra careful out there. And I would say this, even when John worked the way he normally works, he hits hard in safe places. So it's not him taking, but I think when I was watching it, outside of the big clubbing forearms and everything, even the clothesline was very, you know what I mean? Not from the corner and just jumping and throwing the shoulder and the arm into you. So I could tell there was a level of care that might have been brought down from the office to say, we got to get out of this. And I'm sure there was conversations with, whatever potential lawsuits amongst the lawyers like Jerry McDevitt and all this stuff in the building, and what can we do to kind of make it go away. Pure speculation, but I feel like you're nodding your head. People are probably nodding their heads. It's not the timeline and the events leading up to that, and also obviously the BWO disappearing not long after that, kind of tie into a good theory.
I can't remember what you told me about the chair shot, but you said when we first talked about it, that it was not your intention to knock JBL's head clean off his shoulders. But I think a lot of viewers at home, or, the so-called quote-unquote smart marks out there, you were getting revenge on Meanie. Which of the two was it? Were you getting any revenge, or did you just hit him hard or too hard? What do you think?
No, absolutely not, because I didn't hit him any harder than anybody would take a chair shot at that time unprotected to the head. The thing that I was fighting, not fighting, but talking about really pushing for was the fact that John was so much taller. And we talked about real wrestlers' heights. He's a monster. So I can't hit him on top of the head cleanly because he's so much taller. So I was trying to get John to be on like one knee, take the chair shot like that to where it's over the top with the seat of the chair. The way it was presented, John was standing as tall as he could stand. I think he bent over a little bit to take it, but that's why the rear part, the back rim part of that, much like the guardrail that hit me in the back of the neck, that's the part that got him on top of the head. Did I swing the chair as hard as I could? I swung the chair as hard as anybody would swing a chair to make the noise. Not to hurt anybody, not to put literally a hole in the guy's head, because he had a hole in his head that needed stable. It was ugly. I saw it. It was about as, and you saw the blood just started pouring out every bit as much as Joey Mercury with the ladder. Like it was pouring out. And yeah, this is not the part where people can, they want to say, yeah, you got revenge and you got him and you stood up for Meanie. No, every single day that this comes up, I feel bad about it because maybe people can say, well, it's Bradshaw because Bradshaw was a bully or whatever you want to perceive him to be. He was a loudmouth. He was mean. He roughed people up. You can think whatever you want, or he's just does a great job as a heel, and that's why I hate him, which means you would want me to get my head clean taken off as right to censor Stevie Richards. It's not what we get in the business to do. It's not what we do. We do not get into the business. We should not get into the business to hurt anybody. We get into the business to make other people look good and get ourselves over at the same time, and they are supposed to try to make us look good while getting themselves over. It's a symbiotic relationship. I cannot, or nobody can be world champion without somebody putting them over. Nobody can do a move to somebody without somebody cooperating and letting them do it. Nor more should I say, nobody can do a move that looks fantastic or even good without the cooperation of the other person. We showed it last week with Mike Blackwell. We showed it this week with that guy, Death Row. When cooperation doesn't happen, it gets ugly, boring, and counterproductive to the business real quick. So yeah, and I apologize to John, and he deserved an apology. Independent of whatever he did to Meanie, he deserved an apology. And you know what? I was like, I'll go to the hospital with you. No, that's okay. And he didn't go to the hospital. That Monday, I called him and checked on him. The next week when I saw him at TV, I asked him how he was doing. Can I do anything? Can I get you a drink? Whatever. Not kissing his ass, but showing the courtesy that I hurt a fellow wrestler. And that's like you just talked about not too long ago, Bret Hart and Goldberg. What was Bret Hart's biggest problem after Goldberg hurt him?
He didn't check on him.
He didn't check on him.
Same with Steve Austin and Owen Hart.
Didn't check on him. It's a big thing. It's a big thing, and dare I say it. Now, you might think, well, I don't want to bother him. He's going through a lot or anything. You got it. You got to follow through. I'm sure Owen cared, and I'm sure to a degree Goldberg cared. They don't seem like very apathetic, mean, soulless people.
But it's almost like embarrassment in that case. I think Owen Hart, I believe he felt terrible.
Could be.
But it's almost like embarrassment, or like that you can't admit to yourself because of the embarrassment of what you've done.
You almost shut down. You shut down within yourself, and you're like, you don't know how to process it yourself, I guess, right? So that's a guess. But with John, I can't say it enough. I was absolutely, completely wrong for hurting another wrestler, JBL or anybody else. I was 100% wrong for that. That's independent and isolated from the One Nght Stand we just watched, from even how Bradshaw treated me in the past. That's not the point of the business. So when people say that, it's great for urban legends. I hate that. And there's still going to be people that said he's only saying that to cover for himself. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to WWE. I'm not going to, Game Changer Wrestling. I'm not going to TNA or AEW. I'm probably never going to see John ever again in my life. So why would I lie? And you know what? If I saw him, what I'd do? Dude, How are you feeling? How are you doing? Because whatever concussive effects or anything like that, and I don't want to get in trouble because I made Raven mad because I brought up the possibility of cognitive stuff and CTE, but I would ask him how he's doing. And if John was doing rough or saying, man, I'm having a rough time remembering, I'm having a rough time with this or that, you know what I would do? I would call the guy and say, dude, if I even had like 0.5% to do with what you're feeling right now, I am beyond sorry. I apologize. That's what we do. So maybe that's a lost thing. Maybe people get their stuff in. Maybe people don't care. Maybe it's all about offense now. It seems to be with the products we're watching right now, you know, especially in AEW, dragging the kid across the ring as he's concussed, very like lack of awareness. But I refuse to be that way. If I'm going to be in an outdated era, like caring about a guy that people say I shouldn't care about after all these years, then so be it.
One more thing about the chair shot itself. Did you know you caught him immediately, or did you only see like the full effects after when you were looking down at him and with blood pouring out, or did you only notice at the backstage afterwards, or did you just know you got him straight away?
I didn't even know until I got the gorilla and Taker was waiting for me there, and I looked at the monitor with the replay. You have to think, I hit him with the chair, went right out of the ring with the chair, and then Orlando and I started brawling. Meanie pinned him, left the ring, and then we were outside. Batista had caused the thing with the spine buster and all that stuff and put Meanie on top. So the focus was on Bradshaw and them, but we had peeled out. I think we even went like side ramp, not even up the ramp, because Batista, if I remember correctly, was on top of the ramp smiling about costing John the match. And John was selling it and there was blood. I was already, I think, back to Gorilla to wait for John, along with Meanie and Nova. The entire, if I can remember correctly, Gorilla was empty. Only Taker was there. And looking at me with those eyes. And he told me, and I looked, and I was like, dude, I did not mean to do that. That's an absolute accident. I feel terrible. He was mad, and then he kind of calmed down, and he said, listen, you have to understand, the roster's thin enough as it is. We need all the guys we can have right now, and now one more guy is out because of you. What can you say? Yeah, you're right. It's because of me. So John came back. I apologize. He's smiling, as anybody would. By the way, more times than not, even if you kill somebody, you come back, hey, brother, how was it? Oh, it was great, man. Thank you so much. That's the attitude he has. I went right up to him, dude, I'm so sorry. No, it's okay. It's okay. Oh, my God. Wow, I think I have a hole in my head, which he did. And then when he went to the trainer, I followed him like a little puppy dog to the trainer and stayed there while they stapled him up. Meanie came up, he shook his hand. How was it? All that stuff. Nova, I stayed there. Dude, I'm so sorry. He's like, it's okay. It's okay. I would not leave his side. Do you need something to drink? Do you need water or something? And people can say, once again, whatever they want. That's what the business is supposed to be about. And if he was going to the hospital, I would have stayed with him. If he was staying overnight, I would have stayed with him or been in the waiting room. And here's the other thing, like Brett said, I would have gave him a ride to the hospital, waited and gave him a ride back to the hotel, and probably offered to give him a ride to the airport.
After this, you give an interview to WWE Magazine. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I gave an interview to WWE. This is where the urban legend comes in, where basically I did get revenge from Meanie. That was a receipt. We used wrestling terminology, shoot terminology, I believe, in the kayfabe sense that I was giving a receipt. That was John's idea. I remember we were walking back. It might have been before or after he got stitched. I'm not sure, but it was in the hallway with the bleachers where they usually have like the walks to the ring or whatever. And he said, you know what? I have an idea. And he goes, why don't you go to the magazine people? Or the magazine people were kind of right there. And he got the idea, go to the magazine people and tell them it was a shoot and you got revenge from Meanie and everything like that. I said, are you sure? He goes, yeah, do it, man. Do it. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. So I did that. And I told this story before. The guy who's waiting for me in the gorilla, and I'm saying I didn't mean to do it, And I said, it was an accident. I'm so sorry. Ends up reading this article before the next TV and basically thinks that I lied to his face and is about as mad as you can be, talking about Undertaker. He called John and he said, hey man, what's up with this article? Did you see this? And did you see, like, he's mad up to, this isn't like the next day. I think Taker's mad for a few days, and it might have been right up until before TV. So if he didn't have a conversation with John, he was having a conversation with me. So John goes, oh, no, I told him to do that. I thought I was right there when he did it, and I told him what to say and all that stuff. Oh, okay. I mean, it was WrestleMania, Austin and Shawn Michaels, and Taker's taping the fist. So yeah. So I dodged the quick hands of Taker that time. They would not have been Seth Rollins' egg beaters, I guarantee, if he got to
palm
me.
Inwards kind of things. Did you?
Yeah, it would have been more along the lines of Dan Spivey hitting Mike Blackwell.
Did you kayfabe the magazine people, or were they sort of in on it as well? And you had
No, they were right there with John and me. John and I were right there. Yeah. But if they had exposed it, it was still touch and go a little bit about the business. You know what I mean? People knew, but you didn't volunteer everything. You know, I'm not, like the people in Retribution, we're not really terrorists. Don't come at us like that. We're going to ruin our own heel gimmick. No, but if that person had said, like, editor's note, this is all fake, John and him were right there, I think that Taker would have taped the fist up for that.
Well, I mean, that's what I was sort of getting at, like Code Red. Well, I don't know if Code Red was still there when you got there, but then, there was Bite This and the website and stuff like that. I didn't realize, like, if there was...
Confidential was there. Confidential.
That was later. That was like
Red.
2002. I think Bite This was like 98, 99, something like that.
No. This is way past that,
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
No, the Bradshaw thing's way past
No.
that.
I mean, the question I'm going to ask is, did you always have a slightly kayfabe relationship with those people who put out the official press releases or company-approved interview kind of things?
No, I mean, they weren't clued in, like, hey, by the way, here's the way we make the donuts type of thing. It was literally like they kind of knew, but they were only told what to do stories on, the interviews, and the talent knew to stay within character. So I think it was just kind of an unwritten way of doing things. Like if you did an interview, you put a video up. And also back then, there were checks and balances where I think Vince or somebody in creative or somebody close to Vince would be watching that stuff. Like Howard Finkel, other people would be watching it and then stooge it to Vince before it got on the air.
Well, no one's stooging this show before it gets on the air to Vince McMahon or anyone else. So it will be broadcast hopefully this Friday. But thank you so much, everybody, for watching. As I always say, we are out every single Friday with a new episode on YouTube and on all podcast platforms whenever it's ready. Occasionally it's ready for 2 p.m. Eastern. Occasionally we've got to do it a bit later just because it's such a quick turnaround time for the amount of stuff that we do in this show that occasionally we can be an hour or two behind the times on that. But honestly, you've got to believe we're putting so much effort into every single one of these with the graphics and the B-roll and everything else like that. So we hope our efforts are not in vain and you're enjoying it all. And once again, the plugs, YouTube, Stevie Richards Fitness channel. Why don't you call yourself Stevie Fitness for brevity's sake? Goodness me. That'd be terrible. I've just written.
I have no idea.
I've taught myself
Great
out
idea.
that
After
already.
all these years, maybe that's why I'm only getting 400 views per video. It's like your name's too long. Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to plug your stuff and then Patreon on the way out, so Chris can put the score on text. All right. First and foremost, I want to talk about James and his excellent 2 books on Owen Hart and The Rock. Check them out. They're available. Links will be in the description below. WSI is coming back. We have an interview with Maven coming up very soon, as well as Controversy Creates Cash, Eric Bischoff, where he's going to ask him about his favorite person in the entire wrestling world, Dave Meltzer. So, and also check out that video. Has a great amount of views on WSI, where James reacts to the recent Dave Meltzer news, which I have no idea because James will tell me off camera. But my plug, patreon.com/Stevie Richards. I want to thank a lot of people out there, even on the $1 thank you, brother tier. people are supporting with more than that, which is amazing. You don't have to do that, but I do appreciate it every bit. James will tell you, we're looking at a 75-inch smartboard off camera that we're testing. Every bit of the money support through Patreon and other things goes back and reinvested into the production, into everything. So, and I do document that on patreon.com/Stevie Richards. I want to thank everybody on the Thank You Brother tier and also our producer tier and everybody here at YouTube. Remember, you can also just subscribe and click the bell to get notified. Comment below. Let us know what other destructive match you want to watch. It seems to be a lot in the queue right now. So we do have a lot of topics. So thank you guys so much for watching episode 21 of the Stevie Richards Show. See you next week.